Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you. Should be a good chat this evening. Happy Halloween. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Yeah, let's do what we always do. Let's work our magic. Go.
Second century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just it's a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. We're going to have yet another late night conversation. Now, the way this works is I give my opening remarks, talk about what it is I want to talk about. And then from there, we do a roll call. We find out who's watching, who is on the other side of the camera. Then after that, I answer your questions for the rest of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, send me a super chat on YouTube, send me a Rumble rant on Rumble, send me a Rockfin tip on the Rockfin. I will be answering people's questions. That's the way we do it. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Happy to engage with all of you. Happy to have yet another late night conversation. Should be good. Should be an awesome chat. So yeah, I guess we'll start out with a couple announcements. Just an announcement that I've been making, but I will make it again because it is the center of my focus right now, is the upcoming conference in Portland, Oregon. That is my focus at this time. And it is going to be absolutely tremendous. We are going to have 250 people there. The auditorium holds 250 people. Joti Brar is going to be there. Scott Ritter is going to be there. Garland Nixon is going to be there. David Rovics is going to be there. Lee Stranahan, he's going to be there. In addition to that, we've got Rainer Shea is coming into town. We got Chris Alulli from the Party of Communists. It's going to be quite an event. And you really don't want to miss it. You really don't want to miss it. So I would encourage you, if you plan to come, now is the time to go ahead and register. Go ahead and register for the event, and you can do that on Eventbrite. Let me just copy here. You can register for the event on Eventbrite. It'd be good to know that you're coming. We have got posters up all over Oregon already. We're already getting impressions from the QR code, which is good. People are registering. We got a couple people that are requesting transportation from Portland, parts of Portland to the conference. That's great. So go ahead and register for the event if you're coming. Let us know that you intend to be there. That's one thing you can do. And on top of that, if you want to support the event, the best way to give a donation to help us facilitate everything, because it is certainly not cheap. The best way to do that would be to send on Give, Send, Go. Send a donation on the Give, Send, Go. That would be the best way to support us. We're trying to put together the funds for everything. It's going to be a really great conference. I'm really, really excited about the conference. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. It's going to be really, really great. I'm really excited about it. Looking forward to seeing all of you there. And it's going to be, a lot of things are happening. The night before, we are having an event with Joti Brar from the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. Then we're having the all-day 3 panels, music, speeches, amazing venue reserved. It's going to be an awesome, awesome event. That's taken place. And that is on December 2nd. December 3rd, religious friends of CPI. This is worth discussing, right? Not everyone in CPI is religious, but those of us in CPI that are of faith, are Christians, are going to be having our own event on December 3rd, the day afterwards. And we'll be having this small event. It'll be good. You Are the Light of the World, a presentation from City Builder Ministries. That'll be on December 3rd, the following day. And a whole lot of other things are going on. We're going to have a rally to support the Uhuru movement at a federal building in Portland later in the week. In addition to that, we are going to be having a weekend workshop for new members of CPI the following weekend. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. You really don't want to miss. You really don't want to miss the amazing things that are happening at the upcoming events in December. We will be talking about our involvement in the World Youth Festival that is set to take place. That's going to be very exciting. So make sure to come. Make sure to support our efforts. Make sure to be there. Yeah, a lot is going on, and we need your support. We absolutely need your support, and we need your presence. So please keep that in mind. It's going to be a great, great event. People from all over the country, from the Center for Political Innovation, intend to come to town and be part of it. It's going to be really, really tremendous. So we look to have you there. So I just wanted to get that announcement out of the way. As I said, the way this works, I give my opening remarks. My opening remarks are followed by a roll call. And then from there, I answer people's super chat questions. Our good friend Robert sent a super chat before the show even started. He sent it to me, a long number of points about the Oppenheimer movement he wants me to respond to. So I'm going to open the discussion with that. But if you're on the Rumble right now, if you're on the Rockfin right now, if you are on the YouTube right now and you want to, give us something to react to, give me something to talk about, you want to get my opinion on something, by all means do that. That would be great. Now, earlier this week, or I think it was yesterday, I showed a video about the recent event that I went to for the World Youth Festival. And a lot of that video was in Russian. I did not have any subtitles, but a good friend of mine in Russia, shout out to you if you're watching, did send me a copy of the video with subtitles. Now, this is not the video of my participation. Right now, Peter Coffin is hard at work editing together a beautiful, beautiful film. I've seen some of it. It's a short piece of my time in Russia and all the things I did. And it is really beautiful what Peter Coffin is doing. So that will be my assessment and my documentation of the events. But the folks who put the festival on, they did send me this video, and this is the video I showed yesterday, but now it is updated to include English language subtitles so you can know what they're saying if you are not a Russian speaker. So I'm going to put that on the screen. We'll watch the video of the event, and you'll know what people are saying. And then from there, I'll continue with my opening remarks. So let's go. Let's do it.
Главная цель Всемирного фестиваля – это возможность для того, чтобы молодежь из практически всех стран мира могла собраться на одной площадке, обсудить интересующие проблемы. Причем здесь, конечно, задача, чтобы каждый человек нашел свое место, нашел единомышленников, нашел возможности для развития и движения вперед.
Конечно, очень важный момент проведения вот таких мероприятий состоит в том, что люди могут посмотреть собственными глазами, как выглядят те или иные народы, те или иные страны. Достаточно иногда одного контакта, одного общения с хорошим человеком, чтобы полностью изменить или сформировать отношение другого человека, iностранца, к вашей стране.
Event such as the World Youth Festival is a great way for people to see that the Russians aren't our enemies. They're actually a potential great, strong ally.
I feel great. The people is very nice. All the people help you any place you want me it or any question. So I think the opinion for me, it is a great country with great people.
Нам важно вместе с вами отобрать таких ребят, которые готовы дальше создавать уникальную, настоящую повестку, которая в дальнейшем будет транслироваться во взрослые проекты, потому что мы понимаем, что молодежь это действительно...
All righty. So I think that is, yeah, that, oh, no. It continues.
В дальнейшем будет транслироваться во взрослые проекты, потому что мы понимаем, что молодежь это действительно...
Okay, not sure why the video is paused. Hopefully it continues. Not sure why the video is stopped.
Во взрослые проекты, потому что мы понимаем, что молодежь это действительно...
Okay. Okay, the app seems to be...
Нам важно вместе с вами отобрать таких ребят, которые готовы дальше создавать уникальную, настоящую повестку, которая в дальнейшем будет транслироваться во взрослые проекты, потому что мы понимаем, что молодежь это действительно...
Okay, for some reason the video seems to be paused. Not sure what's going on. Buffering, I guess. I'm playing it off of Telegram. I had a problem downloading it when I first was trying to download it from Telegram, but it wouldn't let me download it from Telegram. So I'm playing it off of Telegram. So I don't know why it's being like this. It's a little odd. But maybe we'll come back to it. We'll have to come back to it at some point. But yeah, there you go. Maybe I'll try reloading it. Okay. This is interesting, right? These streams, this is how you can tell that I'm genuine, right? I'm not a fraud, is that we have technical difficulties like this on these streams. So this is a real conversation. We're real people here. It's interesting. Now it reloaded and then it stopped at the exact same place. This is very, very odd. I have never dealt with anything like this before. It's a 6-minute video, but it stopped at the exact same spot. Very, very, very interesting. Let me try to reload it. I'll try to reload it, see what we can do. But yeah, what did people think of what they saw? Right? What did people think of what they saw? I think it was pretty great. I think it was pretty awesome. And, you know, I'm really glad to be able to share these kind of experiences with all of you. I really am. The ability to come on here and, you know, and engage with all of you. It's a really, really rewarding experience, a rewarding thing. This is interesting. Okay. This is very interesting. It seems to be stopping at the exact same place when I reload it. Yeah, it's stopping at the exact same spot. No. Now it seems to be working. All right, I'm going to try to open video, a new tab. We'll try this one more time. See if it goes all the way. All right. I gotta love technical difficulties, right? Gotta love technical difficulties, but that's the way the internet works. Okay. It seems to be coming along. Seems to be coming along. This is a long video too. This isn't the video I showed yesterday. This is a completely new video. Well, let's wait for it to completely load so we don't have the problem that we had before. This is embarrassing. And we'll we'll play it from the beginning once the whole thing is buffered. This is interesting. But good times, good times. But do people like what they saw? Do people like what they saw before we had the buffering issues? If I went to Russia, they wouldn't be able to get me to leave. Indeed, indeed. Very cool stuff. I'm glad you got to experience it. Well, thank you. Strange indeed. Buffering. Yeah, hey, what the heck, right? You live and you learn. You live and you learn. You do your best. You do what you can. Okay, so now okay. All right. So why don't we just try to play it from the beginning here? I'm going to try to play it once again from the beginning, and hopefully it doesn't stop on us. Let's try it one more time. All right. And all right.
Конечно, главная цель Всемирного фестиваля – это возможность для того, чтобы молодежь из практически всех стран мира могла собраться на одной площадке, обсудить интересующие проблемы. Причем здесь, конечно, задача, чтобы каждый человек нашел свое место, нашел единомышленников, нашел возможности для развития и движения вперед.
Конечно, очень важный момент проведения вот таких мероприятий состоит в том, что люди могут посмотреть собственными глазами, как выглядят те или иные народы, те или иные страны. Достаточно иногда одного контакта, одного общения с хорошим человеком, чтобы полностью изменить или там сформировать отношение другого человека, иностранца, к вашей стране.
Attend Socialism Youth Festival is a great way for people to see that the Russians aren't our enemies. They're actually a potential great, strong ally.
I feel great. The people is very nice. All the people help you. Any place you want me it for any question. So I think the opinion for me, it is a great country with great people.
Нам важно вместе с вами отобрать таких ребят, которые готовы дальше создавать уникальную, настоящую повестку, которая в дальнейшем будет транслироваться во взрослые проекты, потому что мы понимаем, что молодежь – это действительно то будущее, которое создается сегодня.
Tôi được biết là Liên hoan thế giới năm 2024 có rất là nhiều thanh niên từ hơn 80 nước trên thế giới sẽ đến tham dự, và đây sẽ là một cơ hội rất là tốt cho các bạn thanh niên Việt Nam để chúng tôi được gặp gỡ, được chia sẻ cái suy nghĩ của mình với các bạn bè trên thế giới. Và tôi rất là mong muốn là trong chương trình sẽ có nhiều diễn đàn để các bạn thanh niên có thể nói lên cái suy nghĩ, quan điểm của mình, của thế hệ mình về các vấn đề đang diễn ra hiện nay.
National Preparatory Committee is going to hold another meeting where the results of the conference we have held today and 28, we will share it to our Ghanaian youth and also invite them to register to attend this wonderful World Youth Festival.
Каждая страна и каждый народ, сколь угодно малый народ, его история, традиции, культура, религия, национальный язык должны стать отдельным полюсом силы и влияния в мировой архитектуре 21 столетия. И Россия является мировым форвардом этих процессов. Приезжайте в Москву, приезжайте на фестиваль. Мы вместе, и вместе мы создадим многополярный, процветающий, вместе, и вместе мы создадим язык, должны стать отдельным полюсом силы и влияния в мировой архитектуре 21 столетия. И Россия является мировым форвардом этих процессов. Приезжайте в Москву, приезжайте на фестиваль. Мы вместе, и вместе мы создадим многополярный, процветающий мир.
Es muy ambicioso decir que podemos tener un plan, un convenio a futuro en que podamos intercambiar nuestras culturas, con los jóvenes de Rusia.
Здесь очень хорошие ребята со всех различных стран, и вместе, когда вместе, тогда гораздо больше идей, инициатив возникли, но чтобы мы смогли это реально все достичь, тогда нам надо, чтобы мы создали такое активное сообщество.
Есть просто проблемы непонимания позиций друг друга. И мы считаем, что через молодежь, через вот такого рода фестивали, которые мы с вами проводим в следующем году, именно это очень, очень хороший инструмент донести свою позицию.
Я с радостью отмечаю, что представители самых разных стран мира, приверженные многополярному и равному будущему для всех, готовы работать вместе, своим примером демонстрируя, что никакие попытки построить стены между народами не смогут увенчаться успехом, если мы готовы встречаться, взаимодействовать, дружить и работать вместе, объединяя свои усилия.
Мы предоставляем вам площадку, которая позволит вам найти друзей, площадку, где вы найдете отражение своих идеалов. Ведь вы сюда приехали не ради того, чтобы приехать. Я это знаю, со многими из вас мы давно работаем. Вы сюда приехали, потому что каждый из вас верит в то, что вы можете повлиять на ход истории.
We're coming to Sochi, and no one's going to hold us back. And we're proud of what we're doing. We are the real American patriots. We are fully in compliance with U.S. law, so don't try and stop us. There you go.
So we all are different from different parts of the world, but the thing that unites us is something that we must be very much well aware of and must always highlight. So be very much be always inclusive in your policies, in your decision making, in every aspect of the festival.
Participants of the Congress of the International Council of the World Youth Festival 2024 expressed their endorsement of the mission of the festival to consolidate the youth world community around the idea of more equitable multiple world system. Let's continue to enhance communication, bring positive changes, and create a better future.
So there you go. Thank you for sticking with me despite the technical difficulties, but we did get to finally watch the video. And yeah, I mean, it was quite an event. It was quite an event, and I'm really glad that I was able to participate, and I'm very excited about the upcoming festival. And we definitely intend to make it a very big part of the program on December 2nd in Portland. We have a lot of material related to the festival to share. Chris Halali, who is also going to be part of the, he's also on the National Preparatory Committee along with me, and he will be a speaker at the event on December 2nd. So it's going to be a really, really great event, and it's going to be a really, really important global youth festival. I'm really, really glad that we will be able to participate. Just wanted to show that video while we wait, but a lot is happening in the world. Gaza is being destroyed, and it is shocking to see how little the mainstream U.S. media seems concerned about the children of Gaza. They're being killed, they're being bombed, and mainstream U.S. media just doesn't seem to care. And it is shocking. They're more concerned about, they just keep bringing up Hamas. Do you denounce Hamas? And they don't seem to care about the fact that we're facing a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The whole world is calling for a ceasefire, but the United States, on the other hand, is backing up Israel as Israel escalates its atrocities. Meanwhile, we have forces throughout the region, Yemen, Lebanon, and elsewhere, stepping up and saying that they will defend the Palestinian people. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the center of resistance to Western capitalism and Israel in the Middle East, and they are pretty clearly playing that role. A lot of interesting events taking place around the world. The UN Security Council convened a meeting today to discuss Ukraine. And the Russian ambassador, Nebenzia, he pointed out just how ridiculously hypocritical the words of U.S. leaders are when it comes to their supposed concern for civilians in Ukraine, while they veto any resolution that doesn't only condemn Hamas when it comes to the situation in Gaza, and that they are standing against the calls for a ceasefire that are resounding throughout the planet. The whole planet wants a ceasefire and wants Israel to stop just bombing and killing Palestinians. And the United States is standing there blocking UN resolutions that would enable a ceasefire. It's just utterly horrific. And then they turn around and say, well, they're so concerned about the children of Ukraine. Is the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine? It is just downright absurd to watch. Yet the response of so many of the voices in mainstream U.S. media is to just say, well, Hamas is bad. Hamas committed terrorist attacks. I mean, they're ignoring the fact that Palestinians are living in an open-air prison. They're packed in there. They're ignoring the facts that that Israel has continued to, brutalize and terrorize the citizens of Gaza for so long. It is particularly wild to watch international media react the way they are. But yet, in country after country where they have outlawed waving Palestinian flags, in France and Britain and Germany, people are still going out into the streets and getting arrested, waving Palestinian flags. The huge global upsurge of support for the Palestinians right now is really inspiring to see. Demonstration after demonstration. Thousands and thousands of people are out in the streets supporting the Palestinians. Even here in New York City, which is a stronghold of pro-Israeli sentiment. It's quite inspiring to watch. It's inspiring to watch the resistance, but it's also horrific to watch the indifference that we're seeing from the Western powers. And that whole situation has the world holding its breath that this might turn into World War III. It's really, really concerning. Now, we at the Center for Political Innovation, we are very concerned about the situation regarding the Uhuru movement that's facing FBI indictment for allegedly being Russian agents. And we've talked about that case. And I guess I will show, I think I've got the video here. I've shown you all this video before, but this is from a recent CPI film that we made, and it's about why the Uhuru case is so important. And I think I've still got that video here. Right? I think I've got, why the Uhuru case is so important. So we'll put that on the screen. U.S. media kind of forgot about those communities. Well, Uhuru, they went out there because they saw black and brown people like themselves that were out there protesting and rioting, and they stayed there. And they've been there since 2014, providing services in the community, giving these young people in the community something constructive to do, not just go out and break shit to raise awareness about the conditions they're in, but ways to actually feed people and serve the community. And they've been there in St. Louis since 2014 doing constructive work. They have really escalated these programs. They have a farmer's market. They provide classes and services to pregnant mothers, and in particular in St. Louis, Missouri, and in St. Petersburg, Florida. They're trying to undo the damage that the U.S. Department of Justice and the state police and the local police and all the forces have been doing in communities like Ferguson, Missouri. And at the same time that they've done this community work, the African People's Socialist Party has also taken a firm anti-imperialist stance. They support China. They support Russia. They support Cuba. They support Iran. And when the United States started piling weapons into Kiev, they defended Russia's right to intervene.
This defensive war in Ukraine that Russia is actually waging against world colonial powers, not Ukraine as a single entity, but the U.S. and all colonial powers who have an interest in colonially dominating African people right here in this country and around the world and extracting resources from the majority of peoples on the planet. That system, this current system, is in severe crisis, and they cannot rule in the same old way.
Because of that, their homes were raided. Then months later, the federal government came out with an indictment, and it's charging them with being Russian agents. And it's trying to allege that the election campaign that they ran in St. Petersburg, Florida, was somehow interference in the U.S. electoral process.
4 activists associated with the People's Democratic Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party have been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice. The indictment from the U.S. Department of Justice accuses them of spreading Russian propaganda and cites simply some web conferences that they had, some Zoom meetings, some emails they sent out, as well as the fact that they have run routine election campaigns. Is this of concern to the Secretary General as an attack on human rights, freedom of assembly, etc.?
I frankly was not aware of the case before you mentioned it. Let me look into it and I will get back to you.
What's going on in Africa is directly connected to what's going on here. What's going on in Ukraine is connected to what's going on in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? It's an international global economy that's all connected.
Because they go to conferences in Russia, this constitutes Russian meddling in the elections. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. They've been running these campaigns for years, since before I was born. Back in the 1970s, they were running people for office. Their platform of reparations, I mean, Marianne Williamson, she's a major Democrat candidate. She also says she believes in reparations. I mean, it's not a unique message that they have in that sense, but they have been targeted because they're doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, you know, at all of our meetings, we have a picture of Fred Hampton up on the stage because Fred Hampton, he built a free breakfast program. He organized what he called a rainbow coalition, uniting low-income people, white, black, brown, Arab, Latino, into one organization, you know, trying to build up community empowerment, trying to do community service projects while teaching Marxism and socialism. You know, we look at Fred Hampton as a great example of the American revolutionary tradition. And, you know, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, you know, they don't like that we wave the American flag. They don't like that we consider ourselves patriotic. They have their own kind of unique analysis. They talk about what they call the colonial mode of production. That's not traditional Marxist thinking. And we don't agree with them on a number of issues. But it doesn't matter. We support them.
We all have to stand up and oppose the ideology of division and support an ideology of unity based upon our material interests, you know what I'm saying, to work together.
People who can't understand that, people who can't get past, you know, this or that, like, we got to put aside our differences and say that if they come for them, they come for all of us. If they go after them, they got to deal with all of us. That needs to be the attitude among anti-imperialists. Yeah. So, you know, that's the case that we are doing everything we can to highlight. We've criticized the Answer Coalition for how they disregarded the big march that they've been planning November 4th. You know, that was really reprehensible what the PSL did. But anyway, just thinking about things I can talk about on these streams. One thing that I did come across was I came across a conservative video attacking Howard Zinn. And I watched this video, and the video is off in many, many ways. It is wrong in many, many ways, but it shows you how anti-communist and conservative, like pro-imperialist conservative rhetoric, how it is framed in a way and how it's effective. So I'm going to react to this video. You know, it's called Howard Zinn, Hollywood, the Fairy Tale of American Evil, the Architects of Woke. We're going to react to this because Howard Zinn's books are very important. It's great. And this is how, like, anti-woke conservatives kind of manipulate the argument. And some of this video is just stupid and ridiculous, but some of this video is also, it shows you some insights. And so it shows you how we need to speak about things in order to be clear. So let's watch.
Frozen movie is barely disguised political propaganda. Okay, I promise I can back that up. In the movie, our hero sisters learn a dark secret that their power-mad grandfather betrayed the native people of their land, slaughtering their leader and stealing their wealth. This is a well-worn plot device. Indigenous innocents terrorized by greedy colonialists. This is Hollywood attempting to say something profound about the origins of the real America.
Well, I mean, Native Americans were killed in order to make the United States, right? And this video doesn't deny that, but somehow tries to deny that. And like, you watch this, this is just enjoy it.
This is fake history.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And later in the video, you admit that's not fake history.
Invented by this guy. Howard Zinn. Back in 1980, Zinn was just an anonymous history professor when he published this book.
Well, that's actually not true. Howard Zinn had a big following. He was a well-known left-wing activist, academic. He was not an unknown history professor. He was a well-respected figure in left-wing circles associated with the civil rights movement. He'd briefly been a member of the Communist Party during the 1950s. He wasn't an unknown history professor. So that part there is just flat out wrong, but continue.
A People's History of the United States. It had the modest aim of smashing America's self-satisfied mythology.
We grew up with the idea that we are special, we are different, we are the Boy Scouts of the world. Well, when you look at the history of this country, we were not. We were not.
Zinn wanted to flip the fairy tale about America, to expose our heroes as bloodthirsty villains. And his top target, right there in chapter 1, was Christopher Columbus.
And what makes me think about this video, because this video is only 6 minutes long, I think this guy only read chapter 1 because that's the only part of the book that he really focuses on. And in doing so, it just gets embarrassing. But let's continue, right? There's a lot more to Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States than just chapter 1. And oh boy.
According to Zinn, indigenous society was a perfectly progressive utopia.
A world where human relations were more egalitarian than in Europe, and where the relations among men, women, children, and nature were more beautifully worked out than perhaps any place in the world.
The Arawak Indians.
And this is where they start to have a point, right? The glorification of indigenous civilization, right? The idea that before a society has technology, it's somehow more pure. That's not Marxism, right? That is anti-material. That is primitivism. And that's a big part of the synthetic left. And he's got kind of a point here, right? This is where he's actually kind of getting at something.
Indians Columbus encountered were unspoiled by petty capitalist desires.
These Arawaks were remarkable for their hospitality, their belief in sharing.
Columbus was a greedy thug.
Well, actually, he was.
Columbus had to make good his promise to fill the ships with gold. At one part of the island, he got into a fight with Indians who refused to trade as many bows and arrows as he and his men wanted. 2 were run through with swords and bled to death.
Columbus was the prime mover of centuries of relentless plunder.
Thus began the history, 500 years ago, of the European invasion of the Indian settlements in the Americas. That beginning is conquest, slavery, death.
Zinn invented this flipped history of Columbus as the ultimate villain.
Aggression, expansion, the enslavement of other peoples. And that's what Columbus represents.
But it is what he represents. And that is what he engaged in.
Zinn's book is not history. It's a new fairy tale.
Well, what is he wrong about? What is he inaccurate about? What is he saying that's false?
One that strategically slices away some inconvenient complexities. For starters, Columbus did not introduce slavery to America.
That's not what he said. First of all, it's not what he said. Yes, the Aztecs practiced slavery. The Incas practiced slavery. Tribes enslaved each other. But that doesn't make what Christopher Columbus did in any way more justified. And this is a line of argument that you get from defenders of the African slave trade as well. They say, oh, well, there was slavery already existing in Africa. So somehow it made what the white colonizers did to the black people okay. This is a really common trope of argument, right? And it makes it sound like the conquest of entire nations, the exploitation of all kinds of people is somehow justified because those people were brutal to each other at some point, right? You know, because we in the United States have racism, it would be totally okay for some other country to invade us and take us over because we're already oppressing our own people, right? That's the kind of argument here. And it is a very, very fallacious, but a very, very common argument, again, among apologists for colonialism, etc.
One of his early journal entries records how the Arawaks bore marks of wounds on their bodies, which indicated that people came from other islands and had tried to capture them.
And Good question. You're on the list. And what's your point? So because other people tried to capture them, that made it okay for Christopher Columbus to capture them?
Pre-colonial America was not a perfectly peaceful utopia.
He's right, it wasn't. But that doesn't make the crimes against the indigenous people justified.
The Arawaks were in constant conflict with nearby tribes.
So what?
Including the Caribs, who had a tradition of cannibalizing their enemies.
So what?
They'd chop up the hearts of particularly courageous adversaries and feed them to their children. And a standard warfare tactic for many tribes was disemboweling defeated enemies and tying them to a tree with their own intestines.
Yeah, and look at hanging, drawing, and quartering that they did in England. And look at crucifixion that the ancient Romans carried out. I mean, this doesn't add up. So you're saying that because this group of indigenous people did mean things to each other and oppressed each other, therefore it's somehow okay for them to be slaughtered at the hands of white colonizers? Like, this is not logic.
Every civilization is built on cruelty.
Every civilization is built on cruelty. So therefore, it's okay. It's okay to wipe out one group of people as long as, you know, they are not perfect themselves.
Ugly facts don't mean that Indians were simple savages.
Sounds a lot like what you're saying here when you're accusing them of cannibalism, when you're trying to say that Columbus's actions were okay. That actually does sound a lot like what you're saying here. You're trying to play into the idea that somehow Columbus made things better because these indigenous people were just so brutal to each other. And as Howard Zinn pointed out, the indigenous people were a little bit too naive and trusting of Columbus. They assumed good intentions on his part because of their pre-capitalist relations. So yeah, you know, you're kind of taking advantage of one of the weaknesses of the woke narrative, which is to kind of see things that are more quote unquote primitive as good. You're taking advantage of that. And then you're extrapolating from that all kinds of ridiculous things. Like, I mean, this is particularly disgusting what he's doing.
The totalitarian parliamentary system of the Iroquois nation may have inspired key features of the U.S. Constitution. Now, Christopher Columbus committed about an average number of atrocities for a colonialist.
Do you hear that? Okay, he just said Christopher Columbus committed about an average number of atrocities for a colonialist. As if that somehow is some kind of defense, that's some kind of justification, that's some kind of like, do you hear this? Right? And he's not denying any of what Howard Zinn writes about the horrendous things that Christopher Columbus did and that Spanish colonialism did to the indigenous people. He's just saying, yeah, that's what colonizers do. And so how is he debunking anything that Howard Zinn said? Howard Zinn documented what Christopher Columbus actually did to the indigenous people. And he's just saying, yeah, well, indigenous people were mean to each other before he got there. So, and it was just average for a colonialist. I mean, there you go.
Which was a lot.
So Howard Zinn was telling the truth.
But his discovery also connected the continents, supercharging innovation in food, medicine, literature, and technology. And the true tragedy.
Wow, you know? So next time I talk about the Soviet Union's accomplishments and one of them goes, no, there was gulags, I guess I can say that that none of that counts, right? This is selective outrage. And this is how these guys play this game, right? You know, that Columbus's crimes were totally okay. We don't have to acknowledge them because they led to historical and material progress, right? But notice that when he starts talking about Stalin and Mao, all of a sudden it's a very different story.
Of his discovery was entirely accidental, as those same new trade routes enabled a cross-continental germ exchange that wiped out up to 90% of America's indigenous population.
And that right there is a lie. When he says that 90% of the Native Americans died from germs, that's a lie. There were intentional massacres, many places. There was intentional slaughter. The Native people were crammed into reservations. The Native people, they at one point were intentionally infecting them with blankets with smallpox on it. This is the equivalent of like Holocaust denial. when people say, oh, there were no gas chambers, they all just got disease, they died from disease. It wasn't the Nazis' fault. The people just got sick. That's what he's doing here, right? The Indian Wars did not end until about 1900. From the time of 1492 until about 1900, the U.S. government and its allies around in the Americas were killing indigenous people. And in Central America, there were, massacres and genocides in the 1980s with Rios Montt. This is absurd for him to just say, oh, 90% of them, they all just, 90% of the indigenous people died, but it was all just from disease. That's a lie. That's just a flat out lie. Look up the lists of massacres of Native Americans that happened, right? There was a general, General Shivington, who said nits make lice and slaughtered them all. He's just glossing over all kinds of horrendous crimes against humanity and just said, oh yeah, well, they got some germs. It's not our fault.
All of these things are true at the exact same time. Anyone selling you some simple soap opera story arc.
No one's selling you any simple soap opera story arc. It's actually a quite long, complicated story of how the Native people were wiped out. It's quite a long, complicated story. You got the Indian schools where their language was removed from them, where kids were taken from their parents. You've got the forcing westward and the many treaties that were ripped apart. You've got what went on in North America. You got what went on in Central America. It's like no one's giving you a simple story here. We're pointing out that the colonialism, the primitive accumulation that began with capitalism, when capitalism began, to expand and to emerge from feudalism, and you had the rise of colonialism around the world. It included millions and millions and millions of people being killed, and the transcontinental slave trade and the slaughter of the indigenous people, and in Europe too, right? You had the clearing of the commons and the way that they basically drove people off the land. Peasants were turned into wage slaves. This is absurd what he's saying here. No one's calling it a soap opera.
About unique American evil is not trying to educate you. He's trying to enslave you to an ideology. That's Zinn's mission, ideological enslavement. His blind enthusiasm for the grand collectivist experiments of Stalin and Mao left him mute when those experiments turned massively murderous.
And this is false too. Howard Zinn was briefly in the Communist Party USA, but he was an anti-communist, right? He was one of those, he was like a Noam Chomsky type figure. But also, hey, according to this guy, all the crimes of Christopher Columbus are justified because they led to historical progress. Well, I'm sorry, who turned China into a superpower? Who raised millions of people up from poverty and made China a modern country? Who invented space travel? Who defeated the Nazis in World War II? Who industrialized? So, if you're going to play this game of, well, Christopher Columbus did bad things, but, it led to historical progress, how come that doesn't apply to Stalin and Mao, who made both Russia and China into modern countries?
Zinn was an active member of the Communist Party at the height of the Cold War.
Very briefly was he a member of the Communist Party. That wasn't even revealed until after his death. Okay, he was a Cold War liberal. And he was like hanging out with Noam Chomsky. He was one of these kind of like liberal gatekeepers. He hung out with Democratic Socialists of America and such. Come on now.
Zinn's enslavement initiative has gone remarkably well. A People's History became a publishing phenomenon, eventually selling 2 million copies and infiltrating primary and college curricula,
Yeah, because the whole world knows that the United States has done these things, and that if you're going to be able to engage with people around the world about the United States, you have to be able to acknowledge the crimes that have gone on.
Millions of students. And the book is a mainstay in college, featured on over 1,500 curriculums. For many students, Zinn is the primary American history they receive. Zinn himself...
that's false. I'm sorry, that's actually not true.
...himself becomes a pop culture.
People don't read Zinn until like high school or at least college. And, my school, we certainly weren't reading Zinn. I'll tell you that much.
Culture icon.
We have made some improvement in our barbarity over 300 years, I would say. No? Not going to go there, huh?
And there's a certain category of American laborer that finds Zinn's simple stories just irresistible.
I'm Woody Harrelson, and I'm sitting here with Howard Zinn, one of my great heroes.
Hollywood just loves Zinn, with A-listers lining up to perform live readings of his work.
And Howard's book was very helpful. You want to fight on the right side of history.
Do you want to watch Jason Bourne, Aragon, Whistler, and the Bald Kidnapper?
Like, why is this an argument, right? So it's like liberal Hollywood people like Howard Zinn. And, I mean, do they like him because he says false things? I mean, you just admitted that everything he said about Columbus was true. You just, you know, say that the indigenous people were also mean to each other, so somehow that makes it okay. And it led to historical progress, so that makes it okay. You know, and then you tried to blame the genocide of the indigenous people on disease, which is just straight up historical revisionism. It's roughly the same thing that Nazi Holocaust deniers do. And now you're trying to get us to not like Howard Zinn because people in Hollywood like him, right? And this is like he's pandering to a conservative audience, right? These are all like Hollywood liberal elites want you to like Howard Zinn, so he must be bad.
Can the Princess Bride read a Zinn speech calling for a Marxist revolution? Oh, yes, you do.
The wealth is distributed in this country
as not simply to require small reform,
but to require a drastic reallocation of wealth.
And that's, he's got a point here. Socialism is not redistribution of wealth. Redistribution of wealth happens under every system. But the term redistribution of wealth is something that a lot of working Americans feel very threatened by because they've worked very, very hard to have what they have. I mean, you know, think about how hard, especially in this age of inflation, how many hours people work just to make ends meet. And to be told that socialism is about taking away the wealth that you have worked hard to earn and giving it to someone else, you know, I can understand why people might be defensive about that. But that's not what socialism is. Socialism is public ownership of the means of production. It's central planning of the economy. But the liberal thing about redistributing the wealth, right? I can see how that is threatening to a lot of working class people. And so he fixates on that because the idea that socialism, it's that thing from Margaret Thatcher, right? Socialism doesn't work because you run out of other people's money. Well, the Soviet Union didn't run out of other people's money. They made the Soviet Union into a superpower. China has not yet run out of other people's money. In fact, they've become the second largest economy on earth. Poverty is not socialism, but to be rich is glorious. But, you know, liberal welfare states are about taxation and welfare programs. But Marxism, socialism, etc., that is not. But you can see what he's doing here, right? So you hate the liberal Hollywood elites. I hate them too. But just because they like Zinn, it doesn't make Zinn false, right? They pander to your feeling that someone's going to take away the hard-earned wealth, right? If you're working a minimum wage job or something and you hear that someone's going to take away the little that you've been able to scrape together, you don't appreciate that if you're a working class person. He's good at playing on people's confusion, right? And he's, you know, he did point to a weakness in the Zinn narrative, which is this glorification of indigenous society as if there was nothing wrong there, as if there was no oppression. But his overall point is bullshit, right? At no point in this video has he made a real, genuine critique of Zinn. Zinn was telling the truth about Columbus. That's true. Howard Zinn, you know, by critiquing and pointing out the crimes against indigenous people, was not lying. He hasn't debunked Zinn in any conceivable way yet.
Reallocation of wealth.
From when Columbus met the Arawaks, he was just non-stop bullying people and taking over their resources.
And that's how Zinn's politics make their way to your movie screens. So along with the singing snowman, you get some subtle propaganda. Hey kids, your cartoon heroes are unwitting agents of an evil empire built on plunder. And you are too.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, this is some of the dumb right-wing content. And the thing is, this stuff is appealing to people because people can't stand the woke stuff. And so it's a very, very smart response to make this the only alternative to wokeism. Make this the only alternative to wokeism. People hate wokeism. They hate political correctness. They hate Me Too. They hate cancel culture. And so their response is to get into this stuff. Well, this stuff is pro-imperialist, anti-communist bullshit. But yeah, you know, let's watch some more of this, right? I want to have some fun with this, right? Because I feel like this kind of thing is important. And this is what we're up against, right? That many of the people that are anti-establishment in our time, many of the people that are anti-establishment, you know, they are angry at the establishment, and they see the establishment voicing or giving voice to kind of a vaguely left or woke message. And so that makes them supporters of Western capitalism and imperialism. And we need to push back against that. So let me see if there's some other good stuff on this channel I can respond to. Right. Oh, wow. They got Tom Woods on this channel, the big libertarian. Right. Let me see if there's good stuff. Oh, this should be fun. Western intellectuals, communism's cheerleaders. This is going to be fun, right? So we'll put this one on. We'll react to that one, right? All right, that's a thing we can do, right? When we want to just engage with stuff. But if you have any more super chat questions, Battle Cossack, he's got one. I've got one in the kicker. One that somebody sent in early from Robert. But if you have anything for me to react to or engage with in the second half of our show, please feel free to do so. But yeah, we're gonna we'll put on this. This one's gonna be a lot of fun. It's called Western Intellectuals, Communism's Cheerleaders. And as somebody who studied the history of communism, I'll be seeing this with fresh eyes, folks, and I will happily be engaging with this. All righty, let's put this one on. This will be fun. All righty. Just waiting for it to load. Good times. Glad we can hang out, folks. Glad we can just be on here and hang out and enjoy ourselves. Good times. Good times. I'm just waiting for it to show up on the desktop. We'll bring this in. This will be Western Intellectuals, Communism's Cheerleaders. This should be fun.
Looking back at the horrors of communism, it makes people giggle instead of kind of go for tissue and want to cry. You'll see the Che Guevara shirts, but that's just a small part of it. If you talk about people fighting communism back in the day, it's kind of like, oh, this was silly. Everyone was hysterical. It wasn't that big a deal. Well, it kind of is a big deal when literally every phone call you make, someone is listening to, and when kids are taught at school to...
That's what we have right now. That's what we have right now in the United States. Edward Snowden, the NSA, they've revealed they are listening to all of our calls. Our rights are being violated. I'm sorry. Do you really believe that the Soviet Union, with its millions and millions of people, every person was being listened to? But now with modern technology, they are recording all of our calls in the United States. Like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Turn their parents into the police. While they
turn their parents into the police, that was done in the war on drugs here in the United States. You know, kids were told to turn in their parents for smoking marijuana. Like, what is he talking about? I mean, right? Kids are turning in their parents now for being racist, sexist, or, you know, there's all kinds of calls to turn in your relatives for January 6th. Like, that's the country we're living in now.
This was going on overseas in many countries for decades. In full force was the American excuse factory, just brushing aside all the horrors that were taking place and even pretending that things are wonderful.
How is that happening? I'm sorry. Anti-communist propaganda is everywhere. They've been constantly equating the Soviet Union with the Nazis, even though they never did anything remotely close to what the Nazis did. There's endless, you know, saying that Mao was a great mass murderer. No one's justifying or defending the Soviet system. You're just lying, right? Even people who call themselves Marxists are too cowardly to defend the achievements of the Soviet Union and China, etc. So what are you talking about?
And this was a model for us to follow.
The best example of this...
Who said that? Nobody ever said that.
Was a journalist named Lincoln Steffens who wrote for a publication called McClure's. In 19...
Lincoln Steffens was a very radical figure in the 19-teens and 20s. And he liked the Soviet Union. He said, I've seen the future and it works. But he was He was a radical. He was an obscure figure associated with the Communist Party. He was a mentor to Anna Louise Strong, for Christ's sakes.
19, he went to Russia. He came back and he said, I have been over into the future and it works.
No, he said, I've seen the future and it works. You can't even get the quote right.
Now, some historians say he wrote that line even before he left for Russia, so he was going to whitewash that place no matter what he saw. But it
false.
Wasn't just him. It was a lot of American intellectuals who went over there and told us wonderful stories about how great everything was. So we had Jane Addams, we had Rexford Tugwell, who served under FDR. We had all these books coming.
Yeah, Albert Einstein, W.E.B. Du Bois. And you know why that was? That was because during the 1930s, the rest of the planet was having a Great Depression, and the Soviet Union was raising millions and millions of people out of poverty and turning their country into an industrial superpower and electrifying the whole place and building the world's largest steel industry and wiping out illiteracy. And while the Western capitalist countries were saying fascism wasn't such a big deal because at least they killed the communists, the Soviet Union was building a world global anti-fascist united front, organizing artists and intellectuals into a united front against fascism. So many people that were afraid of fascism admired the Soviet Union and took leadership from it. I mean, it wasn't, you want to talk about smart people liking the Soviet Union. Brilliant engineers, brilliant scientists. I mean, my goodness, Albert Einstein, John Steinbeck. I mean, yes, many, many great intellectuals saw that the Soviet Union was having huge economic achievements while Western capitalism was in the middle of a Great Depression. And that was happening. And the Soviet Union was also rallying the world against fascism. And the Western capitalist countries were coddling fascists. They allowed Franco, the fascist, to take power in Spain. They were doing business with Hitler because they wanted to stop communism. So yes, many intellectuals were aware of what was happening in the world at the time and were sympathetic to the Soviet Union. That is a fact.
Forth, like The Challenge of Russia by Sherwood Eddy. Or how about this one, George Counts's The Soviet Challenge to America. Or how about this one, Maxwell Stewart, Where Everyone Has a Job.
Well, were any of those things false? Can you point to me in those books things that people said that were false? Right? I mean, I'm serious, right? There's a lot of great books from the 1930s talking about what the Soviet Union achieved. Open those books and tell me what in those books were false. And yes, right? Anti-Asian racism right there on the screen for you. But what in those books was false? Right? What did they say about the Soviet Union industrializing, about the Soviet Union raising people out of poverty, about the Soviet Union having educational achievements? And what were they saying that was false? Well, it was communism and everyone knows communism's bad. Well, if everyone knows it, it sounds like maybe there wasn't sympathy for them in the West because you're depending on relying on just this everybody knows shit against communism. And if there was a pro-communist bias, everybody wouldn't know it.
And in fact, John Dewey, the famous educator, said in the New Republic magazine in 1928 that I have never seen anywhere in the world such a large proportion of happy and intelligently occupied children.
But I guess you're smarter than all of them because you listen to some Cold War dumb shit. I mean, John Dewey is a very well-respected intellectual, and the New York Times marveled at the Soviet educational system. They built an educational system up from nothing. And they wiped out illiteracy in the country, and they opened new universities and all of that. My God. But none of that counts. Oh my God, he said that the Soviet Union had happy children. That can't be. Oh, it can't be. No child in the Soviet Union was ever happy because it's communism and everyone knows communism's bad. That's all these people have. Is just everybody knows communism's bad. Everybody knows this reliant. They're just relying on appealing to the standard Western narrative. And you're just supposed to hate all these smart people that could see through it. They're not debunking anything that they said, right? You tell me if this point would have merit if they somehow could prove that the Soviet Union didn't have an amazing educational system. Well, it did.
Then there's Oswald Garrison Villard, who was editor of The Nation magazine, which still publishes to this day. Despite not speaking Russian, never having met a Russian peasant, he still felt qualified to say in 1929, after more than a decade of one-party rule and concentration camps.
What concentration camps? concentration camps where people are rounded up and placed there. Concentration means you're concentrating people based on their ethnicity. Gulags were not concentration camps. You know, give me a break. Concentration camp literally means you're concentrating people on the basis of their race. There were no gas chambers in gulags. This is a nasty lie, what he just did there.
Systematic censorship, that what we were dealing with in Russia was what he called the social, moral, political, industrial, economic emancipation of a people.
My people had a very different approach to dealing with the atrocities of communism. Rather than make excuses for it, sometimes we made jokes. And here's how one of them goes. Khrushchev, who succeeded Stalin, is sitting at his desk. Things are going very badly for Nikita, but he's got a drawer that says, in case of emergency, open me. From Stalin goes out.
I don't want to hear stupid jokes.
The United States has elected a hunk for president. Second letter.
The argument in Soviet Russia, and the argument that their apologists in the West made, was you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
No, that was not the argument. The argument was they've raised millions and millions and millions of people out of poverty while the West is having the Great Depression. The argument was they stood against fascism while the Western countries embraced fascism. The argument was there was no unemployment in the Soviet Union. The argument was they were rapidly industrializing and proving that their economic system was successful. No, the argument was not, oh, it's okay to kill people because omelets make a few eggs. That was not the argument. That was not the argument.
But what's really disturbing about that quotation is those so-called eggs were the lives of tens of millions of people.
Oh, right. And I guess British colonialism. And didn't we just show a video from this very same channel that basically tried to justify what was done by Christopher Columbus and the indigenous people? You know, I mean, wow, how many countries, you know, has the U.S. imperialists invaded? You know, you talk about World War I, 20 million workers were sent to their deaths so the colonial powers could divide up the world among themselves. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union raises its people up, industrializes a whole country, defeats the Nazis. I mean, give me a break.
And as someone else famously pointed out, where were the omelets?
Tom, how'd you like it if I invite you over to my house? And I said, Tom, I'm going to make you a great, delicious breakfast. It'll be the kind of breakfast no one has ever seen before. It'll be the most stupendous breakfast ever undertaken. It's a whole new level of breakfast, and we're leaving the old ways behind.
I can't wait.
This is just dumb.
Okay, so breakfast isn't ready, but when you come for brunch, I'm gonna have the best brunch you'll ever see. It'll be stupendous. We're leaving the old ways of making brunch behind, and there's gonna be so much food, you won't know what to do with yourself.
I'm gonna get tired of all this winning.
Okay, here's the deal. Brunch isn't here, but if you come back for lunch, or possibly dinner, or maybe supper, I think that's different.
Michael, I waited till 2 o'clock in the morning. Where the are my omelets?
You're still here?
What? Right? This is the sad thing about this kind of content is that you would only fall for it. They basically only get away with this because people like me are not in the room. The only communists these people are ever going to deal with are going to be woke idiots who hate Stalin and hate Mao just as much as they do, right? Who are obsessed with the transgender thing, who just, you know, want to build worker cooperatives or something. So they're never going to hear the other side of the story. Yeah, that was frustrating. But let's see if there's some other material I can react to. And if anyone has any more super chats or anything they'd like me to react to in the second half of the show, I've got one super chat there. So, you know, give me something to talk about in the second half of our program. But yeah, what else do we have here? I'm looking for stuff to react to, stuff to enjoy. I love reacting and debunking some of this content. It is certainly enjoyable. Just looking for stuff to react to. This could be interesting. The left's religious extremism problem. This could be certainly amusing. I'm curious where they're going to go with this one. I am curious where they're going to go with this one. The left's religious extremism problem. This could be fun. This could certainly be fun. All right. I'm pulling it up. But yeah, there we go. There we go. All righty. This could certainly be fun. The left's cult leaders with Scott Walter. This could be amusing. All righty. Let's see what they've got on here. I'm curious what this one will be. All right. I'm reacting to this in real time. Why not? Right? Just a way to pass the time. All right. Just waiting for it to load. I'm amused to see the way they might do it. Oh, here we go. The left's cult leaders. This could be fun.
Is a trait often associated with the political right, given their cultural conservatism. But to think that the left isn't equally susceptible to religious extremism would be a mistake.
Owned.
Some of America's most deadly cult leaders were deeply entrenched in leftist politics. For example, you're probably aware of the Reverend Jim Jones and the people.
Yep, that's absolutely true. Reverend Jim Jones he called himself a communist, and this part is absolutely true. And the Democratic Party, I've told you all about Reverend Jim Jones on here many times. We've talked about Dianne Feinstein and the death of Harvey Milk and that whole thing. That they have a point here, right? That is truly that is a skeleton in the closet of the California Democratic Party, is their association with that guy. I'll give him that one.
People's Temple. Jones at his Guyana settlement led the murder-suicide of 918 people by cyanide-poisoned Flavor Aid after his cult murdered a congressman.
That was all true.
What you might not know are Jones's far-left ties. When college age, Jones attended Stalin-era Communist Party meetings. Jones said of Stalin, and also the Kamala Harris. Brown savored how Jones turned out Cuba in general. Even after Jones departed San Francisco, Jones echoed Newton.
This is all they've got. This is all
Jonestown resident wrote a reporter and said,
"So this is all. It's just a Jim Jones video. That's all this is. This is just a Jim Jones video. This is just a Jim Jones. That's the whole first 60% of this video is just Jim Jones."
One individuals were poisoned with salmonella to prevent them from voting again. This is hardly the only example of left-wing cult violence.
Here we go. Okay.
Consider the events in the Oregon city formerly known as Rajneeshpuram, where Ma Anand Sheela, second in command for the hippie religious commune, led the largest bioterror attack in United States history.
Well, you have to remember, though, they were anti-communist, right? Those folks were Hindu extremists who were anti-communist, right? In India, Hindu nationalists and Hindus are conservatives. Now, the people who followed them in the United States were like new left counterculture hippie type people. But the Rajneeshis, the Hare Krishna movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, that's all considered right-wing in India. That's all considered far right-wing in India. Those people are considered to be very anti-Muslim, very anti-communist. They reinforce the caste system. Those people are the hard right of India, right? They are traditionalist conservatives. They may have recruited hippies in the West, but they were definitely not left-wing in the politics of India. And that's a weird, interesting thing, is American intelligence had kind of an interesting fixation on Eastern mysticism during the 1960s and 70s. There's a quote that I've often used from John Foster Dulles. He says the religions of the East are anti-communist. The Falun Gong, right? The Dalai Lama, right? I mean, in Asia, one of the main ways that the U.S. government has fought against the Chinese Communist Party and fought against Marxism is with Eastern mystical religious groups. And the Hare Krishna stuff, the Rajneeshis, all of that was part of that. And those groups are considered anti-communist, right-wing, Hindu nationalist in India. So this is dumb.
751 individuals were poisoned with salmonella to prevent them from voting against the commune in a local election. Sheila also conspired with other cult members in a foiled plot to assassinate a U.S. attorney. There's also the Children of God cult, still around and now known as the Family International. That group recruited its first members from the hippies who flocked to California.
Yeah, but they're also quite conservative, though. I mean, they're evangelical Christians, very, very right-wing and conservative.
During the free love era in the late 60s. In line with that free love spirit, the group manipulated its women to have sex with men in order to lure them into the cult. Less in line with the free love spirit, they also forced the women to be paid prostitutes to fund the cult. The group also organized the sexual abuse of children. Or look at Charles Manson's family.
Whoa. Where's their ties to leftists? Where's their ties to communists? I'm other than the fact that they were hippies, right? You do realize that like the Soviet Union really hated long hair and hippies. You realize in the Cultural Revolution, they outlawed rock and roll music. You realize that like communist countries had strict anti-drug policies. Like where is the ties to communists and leftists? You had that with Jones. I'll give you Jones, but I'm not seeing the connections here. Not seeing the connections here.
The group also organized the sexual abuse of children.
Yeah.
Or look
how were they tied to any communists anywhere? They weren't.
Charles Manson's family. While Manson was a white supremacist, he too primarily recruited hippies to his cult.
Why do you think hippies are communists? You do realize that hippie counterculture was intentionally created as a barrier against communism. You do realize that, right? You do realize that like the Soviet Union was very opposed to hippie counterculture. Traditional Marxism rejected that. Even the new communist movement of the 1970s, the Maoists rejected hippie counterculture. You do realize just because you label someone a hippie does not make them a communist, right? In fact, communist countries tend to be quite conservative. You see a lot of militarism. You see a lot of, not using drugs, not promoting sexual promiscuity. A lot of them thought homosexuality was bourgeois decadence or a disease from capitalism. You're just labeling people hippies and therefore they're communists. That's not how it works.
And their bizarre goals involved sparking a race war that militant leftist black nationalists would win. The Manson family's multiple murders at Sharon Tate's house thrilled.
Actually, it wasn't. And there's a new book that's debunked. Actually, the Manson family, that was made up. And this new book by Tim O'Neill reveals that actually, they didn't even know that Sharon Tate lived at the place. Charles Manson was trying to kill a rival drug dealer. Much of the narrative that came out at the time of the Manson killings was debunked. I mean, they actually did kill those people, but they didn't know what they were doing. And the whole idea they were trying to spark a race war and stuff came later.
Leftist Weatherman terrorist Bernadine Dorn, who exulted at a war council featuring posters of Castro, Lenin.
Yes, that's true. Yes, she did hail Charles Manson at the time because U.S. media was portraying him as a hippie, and they were trying to recruit among the hippies, the Weather Underground. They had a position, a unique position. Most of the leftists at the time, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Communist Party, etc., they took the position that supporting the counterculture was not correct, and they wanted to go to the workers. They encouraged people to get jobs in factories, etc. But the Weathermen were a small minority, and they did want to recruit the hippies. And at the time, U.S. media was portraying Charles Manson as a deranged hippie, and so to be edgy, they supported Charles Manson.
Mao, Malcolm X, and Black Panthers, dig it. First they killed those pigs, then they ate dinner in the same room with them. They even shoved a fork into a victim's stomach. Wild. The same meeting featured discussions of whether killing white babies was inherently revolutionary, since all white people are the enemy.
Right. And again, that's not Marxism either, right? And actually, that's the Flint War Council. And I think I have the book here. I think I have the book in this room, if I'm not mistaken. I have a copy of an account of the Flint War Council. Oh, it's right over there. 1 second. I will go and get you. This is important. All right. This is the compendium published by Ramparts Magazine. Well, here, we'll take this off the screen for just a moment. This is called Weatherman, and this is Ramparts Magazine's compendium of writings about the Weather Underground movement when they were around. It's called Weatherman by Harold Jacobs. And I will read to you what went on at the Flint War Council. Because, yeah, the Flint War Council, that was an event. That's where Bernadine Dorn made her statements praising Charles Manson. Yeah, page 337. I will quickly read to you what was said at that meeting. All right. All right. Right. Weatherman continues to promote the notion that white working people in America are inherently counter-revolutionary, impossible to organize, or just plain evil, honky bastards, as many weathermen put it. Weatherman's bleak view of the post-revolutionary world comes from an analysis of American society that says class doesn't count, race does. White workers are, in fact, fighting for their survival, and insisted people doing organizing of factory workers in California. They claim that strikes for wage increases and job security can fairly easily be linked to anti-imperialist analysis. But Weatherman denies that survival is an issue for white workers. Weatherman leader Howie Matchinger derided white workers for desiring better homes, better food, and essentially better lives. Bob Avakian of the Bay Area Revolutionary Union argued that not only do white workers need these things for their survival, but that black people need them and want them too. The several black people Weatherman had brought to the meeting shouted right on and waved their fists. If you can't understand that white workers are being screwed too, and that they are oppressed by capitalism before they are racists, then that just shows your class origins, said Avakian. Mattinger shot back, when you try to defend honky workers who just want more privileges from imperialism, that shows your race origins. The Weatherman position boiled down to an inevitable race war in America with very few, quote, honkies, except perhaps the 400 people in the room and the few street kids or gang members who might run with them surviving the Holocaust. That notion is linked to Weatherman's concept of initiating armed struggle now, not waiting to build a mass white support. That is, a small but courageous white fighting force will do material damage that will weaken imperialism, while the black liberation movement smashes the imperialist motherfucker all by itself. Mattinger talks a lot about how the black liberation movement is so far advanced at this point that the only thing left for white revolutionaries to do is support blacks by fighting cops as a diversionary tactic. So not everyone agreed with them. That was a position that the Weathermen, which were a deranged ultra-leftist sect that was infiltrated by the FBI, that conducted a series of crazy bombings, and now are just part of the Democratic Party with Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. They're just Democrats now. That's what they were pushing. But actual Marxists always had the opposite position, and they were not into the counterculture thing. This is interesting. What else?
Of euthanasia, which is so environmentalist, their slogan is, save the planet, kill yourself.
Yeah, that's called Malthusianism. Karl Marx wrote extensively opposing Malthusianism, right? The idea that we need to reduce the population, overpopulation, read Theories of Surplus Value. Marx has pages and pages against Robert Malthus and the idea that we need to reduce the population to save the planet. That's not Marxist.
Religious extremism comes in various political flavors. Next time you hear someone on the left accuse the Christian right of extremism, don't forget the long history of deadly religious extremism that's come from their side.
Well, I'm curious, what about all the extremist elements that are backed by the American government around the world? How about the fact that Al-Qaeda was used by the U.S. government to fight the Soviet Union? How about the fact that, Wahhabi and fanatical Islamic extremists in Chechnya were used to fight against Russia by the U.S. government? How about the fact that the U.S. government was arming Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists in Syria? How about that? You want to talk about religious extremism? There you go. That one was certainly interesting. I don't know if there's anything else worth reacting to on here. I see John sent me another super chat. Anyone else who has anything they want me to talk about in the second half of the program, by all means, please go ahead and do so. Right? That's what we're doing here. But yeah, I do want to put out a plug. Tomorrow I am going to do a patrons only stream on my Patreon. So if you want to be included, go and sign up on my Patreon. Kind of the deadline here. You want to get on there before midnight. But yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do a patrons only stream. So that'll be good. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else worth reacting to. Again, this is part of that Jordan Peterson universe where like there's no difference between Stalin and Mao and your annoying liberal friend, right? Your annoying liberal friend who's woke is just the same as Stalin and Mao, and it's this very, very, very annoying way that these people argue. And it's just like, yes, the synthetic left sucks. Yes, the synthetic left is anti-working class. Yes, counterculture is annoying. Yes, pessimism and opposition to growth is bad. None of that has anything to do with Marxism, right? And that's why when we say out of the movement to the masses, we have to separate from anti-growth currents. Oh, God. Do socialists oppose happiness? This could be a fun one. But yeah, anyone else who has anything they want me to talk about in the second half of our show, just let me know. Oh, boy. What a night. What a night. All right. Do socialists oppose happiness? This could be amusing. But anyway, see if there's anything else that would be worth replying to, worth engaging with. Happy Halloween, Pan American. Yep. Jordan Peterson's analysis is just lazy. Yep. It is. I would agree. But I have spent a lot of time listening to Jordan Peterson because I've learned that if somebody you don't like is successful, you need to look at what their appeal is. You can learn from other people's strengths rather than their weaknesses. If you don't like somebody, their weakness is easy. And I kind of understand the appeal of Jordan Peterson, right? I mean, he's appealing to a certain loss of meaning and a certain alienation that people feel. And, it's worth paying attention to, right? But yeah, we'll see. See if there's anything else worth replying to. But yeah, we'll put that, do socialists oppose happiness on. There we go. Communism will always be violent. I mean, these kind of videos, it's frustrating because it shows you that, if you don't teach anyone anything, your content will grow, right? If you're actually teaching people things and getting people to think about new concepts outside the box, it makes people uncomfortable. But a lot of social media content is nothing more than telling people what they already believe, what they want to hear. That's a lot of the content out there is just reinforcing people's biases. And it's very frustrating. It's absolutely very frustrating. But a lot of the content that's out there, it's like people already hate communists. So a video goes on there, well, communists are so evil. 10 reasons that communists are so evil, and it's just about reinforcing what people already think. It's not teaching them anything. It's not bringing any new insights. It's not showing them a new angle. It's just kind of reinforcing what people already believe. And that's the problem with a lot of social media content. All right. So we got a couple new ones here. We got, do socialists oppose happiness, right? Do socialists oppose happiness? This could be a fun one. Do socialists oppose happiness? Do socialists oppose happiness? Just waiting for it to load. Waiting for it to load. Bum-ba-dum. Do socialists oppose happiness? Let's find out.
Whatever differences we may have, people of all political views could agree on one thing. That is, however we end up getting there, our goal should be to have happy, flourishing citizens, right?
Well, you would be wrong. There's evil communists who want everyone to be miserable. Mwahahaha. Oh, this is lovely.
Surprisingly, no. Anti-capitalist sociologist Eva Illouz, who has ties to the Frankfurt School of Marxism,
which was set up by the fucking CIA. Give me a break. Theodore Adorno, Herbert Marcuse. That's anti-communism. Oh my, somebody at the Frankfurt School said something. Congress for Cultural Freedom. The CIA paid for all that shit. Right there. I don't care what somebody at the Adorno Frankfurt School, Congress for Cultural Freedom. That's CIA. That's Western capitalist stuff. The U.S. government paid for all of this. Oh my God. If the U.S. government pays for it to fight communism, it doesn't represent communism.
And psychologist Edgar Cabanas are the authors of Manufacturing Happy Citizens, a book that opposes positive psychology.
It has nothing to do with the Soviet Union, nothing to do with China, nothing to do with North Korea, nothing to do with Cuba. Some liberal intellectuals who are paid by the CIA wrote a book. And look at it. It's got people in uniforms on the cover. It's anti-totalitarianism, Manufacturing Happy Citizens. It's practically an anti-communist book, right? It looks like 1984. It's an anti-totalitarian trope. Oh my God. Are you serious? Are you serious? You're going to blame the work of CIA anti-communist liberals on China and the Soviet Union? Give me a break.
Subfield of psychology that seeks to understand happiness and what leads to it. Jacobin Magazine, American.
Anti-communist, the Jacobin Magazine people hate my guts. They consider me to be a fascist. They published nasty lies about Venezuela, claiming that they make people vote to get food cards when they don't. They published a lying hit piece on Venezuela. Jacobin is pro-imperialist. They are social democrats, for Christ's sakes. I mean, they've gone after Tulsi Gabbard for being too anti-war. How does that represent the anti-imperialist countries?
Because premier socialist publication has worked to promote the book and its authors.
So what? So what?
Authors. Why do they oppose positive psychology? Quote, the meritocratic and individualistic values underlying happiness disguise the fundamental differences of class and endorse competition in unequal systems rather than promoting the reduction of economic inequality. In response
to well, Marx pretty clearly makes the case in Critique of the Goethe Program that the only way you have equality is with vast material abundance. You cannot have equality in poverty, right? And that was the mistake of the Cultural Revolution. And the whole understanding that you have in Nicaragua, that you have in Vietnam and elsewhere, is that the way to lead to equality is by eradicating scarcity and unleashing abundance. Right? That's not modern communist thinking. No one's trying to make everything equal. I learned that in 3rd grade too. Communists want everyone to get paid the exact same wage, no matter how hard they work, and that's not what communists think.
To positive psychology's claim that more of a person's happiness is related to the person's own outlook rather than the person's circumstances, Aluz and Cabanas argue, does not this resilient positive discourse promote conformism and justify implicit hierarchies and ideologies?
That's just a bunch of academic blah, 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 right? It's just a bunch of academic blah, 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 blah. That's all that is, right? You're trying to blame the Soviet Union and China for what a bunch of academics, liberal academics who got money from the Ford Foundation wrote.
They add, we must emphasize one more time the crucial...
All right, this isn't even making any relevant points. I mean, right there, right? Oh, okay, somebody from the Adorno CIA synthetic left doesn't think people should be happy. That has no relevance to anything that I believe, has no relevance to the conversation of communism versus capitalism. All right, let's see. Communism must always be violent. Then after that, we'll go to the roll call and I'll start answering questions. What a night. All right. Communism will always be violent.
Estimates of deaths under communism range from 85 to 100 million people. To
Oh,
many.
boy. Right. And estimated deaths under capitalism, all the famines the British Empire imposed around the world, all of the wars the capitalists have waged to conquer new markets, the U.S. government funding drug cartels in the 80s to fight, the communists in Nicaragua that still has a body count in Central and Latin America. It's like they throw some number at you, right? As if, capitalist governments around the world aren't responsible for millions and millions and millions of deaths. The Native Americans killed, this transcontinental slave trade, my God. But anyway, continue.
The collapse of the Soviet Union and increasing economic freedom in China show the failure of Marxism.
Yeah. How does, China shows the failure of Marxism. The government literally owns half of the industries. They have 5-year economic plans where they tell the countries what they're supposed to, the economy, what to do, right? The private companies are basically controlled by the government with central planning. Don't you love how they always just throw that out there? Well, there's increasing, somehow China proves capitalism works, right? Obamacare is communism, but in China, where the government controls the banks and the government controls the industries, and there's 5-year economic plans, and even the private companies have to do what the state says, and there's a ruling Marxist-Leninist party, it's still capitalism because it's successful, right? And somehow China, with its vast, huge state central planning of the economy, somehow proves that you have to privatize everything, and we can't have public schools or else we'll all starve and die. I mean, this is the neoliberal, libertarian logic. But anyway.
Yet many remain convinced that peaceful and productive communism is possible. When asked about the Soviet Union, they may respond, but that's not real communism.
Yeah, and that is the least convincing argument that anyone can ever make. I will say it. I will say that. And anyone who says that needs to shut up, because it's true. If these people were right in what they claimed, if what these people claim, which is that everywhere communism existed, all it ever did was lead to mass starvation and misery, then they would have a point. But it didn't. Communism defeated the Nazis. Communism invented space travel. Communism electrified the Soviet Union. It made China the second largest economy in the world. Under the leadership of Gaddafi, Islamic socialism in Libya had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. Vietnam, the Communist Party has presided over economic miracles, raising so many people up out of poverty, industrializing. I was talking to some Vietnamese communists in Russia this weekend from the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union. Communism has had huge economic miracles and successes all over the world, and you just don't acknowledge that. And yes, when dumb people go, oh, that wasn't real communism, they sound like doofuses.
Believing that dictatorship was the problem. Stalin was the problem.
How was Stalin the problem? Stalin was the guy who presided over making the USSR an industrial superpower. Stalin was the guy who built the world's largest hydroelectrical power plants, who wiped out illiteracy. Stalin was the guy who, who turned the USSR into a superpower. So yes, if somebody says that, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Not Marxist ideas. But communist dictatorships are not an accident. Rather, they're the natural outcome of Marxism put into practice. You, the friendly communist, might...
I mean, if you want to, I would agree. Yes, the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, these countries are the natural outcome of communism put into practice. And that's why they had so many great achievements.
Think you're nonviolent and wouldn't create an authoritarian regime if it were you in power. But if you're truly dedicated to bringing about communism no matter what...
How many authoritarian capitalist regimes are there? Right? I mean, South Korea, the majority of the time since World War II, South Korea has been a brutal military dictatorship. Park Chung-hee, right? Syngman Rhee, Pinochet, right? Rios Montt, there's all kinds of capitalist dictators. Marcos, right? How many authoritarian capitalist regimes are there around the world, right? And do you blame that on capitalism? No.
You would. Don't believe me? Let's imagine your communist revolution. Be it violent or democratic, congrats. Welcome to power. It's time to organize your new classless society.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about this right here, right? So communists come to power, and what happens? Then all the people that are against them, what do? They just, all the country, the USA doesn't invade your country. The USA doesn't put sanctions on you. They don't try to fund a color revolution to overthrow your government. No. You just magically get a blank slate when you come to power. Right?
The first thing you might find is not everyone is so happy you're there. Society.
Yeah, mainly the U.S. imperialists, mainly Wall Street, mainly, the most powerful and rich people in the world who will then start attacking your country with violent threats and attacks.
Society didn't unanimously settle on your vision. So many people aren't going to give up their property to be socialized with.
Many people are not going to give up their property. I think you'll notice the rate of home ownership in China is higher than the rate of home ownership in the United States. More Cubans own their own homes by percentage than Americans do. People having their own homes, which is supposed to be like a staple of capitalism, in communist countries, people have that more.
But you don't believe in their right to private property anyway, so no matter. Off to the gulag.
No, one of the main things the communists did in China was they gave people their own land. They redistributed land to the peasants. The peasants had never had their own land before, and they redistributed land to the tiller. Land reform, land redistribution. In fact, the whole first decade of the Chinese Revolution was enabling people to own their own property. It was giving peasants who had been semi-slaves before their own piece of land. So he's just not, like, that's not true. What do you say? Oh, they're going to take everyone's property. No, they're going to enable people to own property. But anyway.
What was theirs is now the people's.
False.
That wealth might sustain the proletariat for a while, but eventually you're going to have to start producing new goods for the people. From each according to their ability to each according to their need.
That's the higher stage of communism. From each according to their own ability to each according to their need is the ultimate goal. And that can only be realized when you have vast abundance, right? You know, socialism is what exists in China and Cuba and places like that, right? You know, no, from each according to their own ability to each according to their needs is the ultimate goal. It's based on a huge amount of wealth existing. It is the ultimate, you know, it's like thousands of years in the future. No socialist society has had that. People got wages in socialist societies. There was inequality of incomes. No, the ultimate goal of communism, of a stateless, classless world, and what they have in a society that is establishing socialism for the first time, that's not the same thing. So he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
But if people don't get to keep what they make, they don't have an incentive motivating them.
Actually, one of the main ways people, you know, in the Soviet Union were motivated to work is they had this whole program, Stakhanovism, where people worked hard and they got medals, they got rewarded for working hard. And they rewarded the, you know, and in Cuba, they call it emulation, right? Where people who work the hardest, they get rewarded and they get material incentives. Like, this is just not accurate what he's describing here. No one's getting rewarded for working hard. They have pay incentive in socialist societies, even 20th century socialist societies that have, you know, total state ownership of industries. They still reward people for working hard, for working extra hours. This is not accurate.
Not to worry, the new socialist man will take care of that.
The new socialist man was briefly talked about by Che Guevara, and it didn't work. And the Cubans are the first ones to tell you that. But material incentives were used in every socialist society. New socialist man was briefly discussed by Che Guevara in Cuba. There was some of that stuff during the Cultural Revolution, but overwhelmingly, socialist societies reward people for working hard. This is not accurate. None of this is accurate.
Capitalism driving him to be greedy, his mind will be refocused to take care of all the people. Except that didn't happen in any attempt at communism.
Yeah, because no one ever implemented that policy. In all the socialist societies, they had a state centrally planned economy, but people who worked harder got rewarded.
Ever, because man's greed might be heightened by society, but millennia of evolution have also driven a desire to collect goods for oneself. So how do you motivate people to keep working and provide for?
Well, they had material incentives. Like, this is like he's saying that socialist countries had no material incentives. This is ridiculous. They did.
Society, those that don't meet their quotas off to the gulag.
And that's false too. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Those gulags better be pretty bad too if you want people to be incentivized.
There are more people in the American prison system right now by percentage, by per capita, and by numbers than were in the Soviet gulags, right? That is just a fact.
Not to end up there. And if you don't get your gulag...
So you really believe this, that in the Soviet Union, they were going around saying, if you don't work hard enough, we're going to throw you in a labor camp? That's not what happened. You know, yes, there were a lot of people who ended up in gulags who didn't belong there, and the Great Terror, etc. But you're trying to tell me that everyone in the Soviet Union was only working out of fear of being sent to a gulag. No one got rewarded for working hard. This is ridiculous. Like, this is an outrageous claim.
Sending decisions just right, you might end up crippling your production instead, starving millions. And if indeed conditions start to...
Yeah, millions starved before the communists came to power. And it was the communists who brought tractors to the countryside. It was the communists who mechanized agriculture. It's the communists who built huge collective farms and cured Russia and China of the problem of malnutrition that was there over and over and over again. In the old system. You know, China had famines all the time before the communists came in. So don't give me this about starving people.
Deteriorate. You can't let the people know it's better elsewhere, or else they'll want to leave, worsening your production difficulties. So hello, Iron Curtain, and shooting runaways at the border.
that's inaccurate too, but I've talked about that a lot on here. But most people's living standard in East Germany went up, but they were trying, the West was trying to lure the intellectuals away, you know, the needed engineers and scientists and people like that. And so that's what the Berlin Wall was about. I've talked about that before. I mean, this is, again, you know, polls show overwhelmingly in every formerly socialist country, people say life was better.
You don't have to have a violent, evil goal to end up with evil if the demands of reality necessitate violence and evil to bring about your goal. Stop comparing the supposed evils of capitalism and reality.
The supposed evils of capitalism, like everything he's talking about here, right? Wars, authoritarianism, famines, hunger, all of that has gone on under capitalism since the beginning, right? Countries all across the developing world have been kept chronically poor and starving by Western imperialist domination. But now he's trying to make it sound like, oh, the supposed evils of capitalism. But I mean, this is so ridiculous.
Communism in your fantasy and start comparing the realities of both.
China is now the second largest economy in the world. The USSR under Stalin became a superpower. I mean, yeah, let's start comparing the realities of both. Right now in the United States, we're so free market oriented that at this point we have prisons for profit and schools for profit, and our economy is falling apart. And doctors were pushed to overprescribe opioids because it made more profits for private corporations. And they're literally unpaving the roads all throughout this country. Give me a break.
Lifted billions of people out of poverty. The other has killed 100 million.
I'm sorry. The most poverty alleviation in the world has come from the Chinese Communist Party. No other institution has lifted more people out of poverty than the Chinese Communist Party. 800, 900 million people, and they're lifting people out of poverty in Africa with their investments, and they're lifting people out of poverty all across the world. The greatest period of economic expansion in human history was the post-World War II economic period, the post-World War II boom. And what did you have? In the West, you had social democracy. In the communist world, you had rapid industrialization under the leadership of communists. And even in the capitalist countries, you had the Bonapartist military regimes that were using state power. Free markets do not bring economic prosperity. I'm sorry. This is just infuriating.
I'm Joseph Klein.
Oh, boy. All right. There we go. There we go. Do you feel dumber? You should. But anyway, folks, all right, I've got like 4 super chats to answer here in the second half of the show. Not seeing anything on the Rumble, not seeing anything on the Rockfin. But yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. All right, names and locations, folks, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you, and then I will start answering people's super chat questions. Who's with us today? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Got Rupert from England. Love Blind Hate from Binghamton, New York. Micah from Las Vegas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us? Names. We got Killian from Milwaukee. Adelaide from Australia. Steve in Brisbane. Baltimore, Washington area, Hegemony Cricket, right? San Diego, California. Bruce Monroe in the Philippines. La Union Place. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Patch in Arizona. The Seasoned Noob in China. Bob Troy in New York. John McCarthy in Chicago. Jamie in St. Paul. Welcome, Jamie. Herb Bryant in Tampa, Florida. Welcome, Herb. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We got Alex from Brazil, Patrick in Maine, A Better America in northern Michigan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Alex from Brazil. All righty, names and locations. Names and locations. Names and locations. All right. Christopher in Texas. CJ from Boston. Welcome, CJ. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. All righty. Anyone on the Rockfin? Oh, Boris in Illinois is on the Rumble. Shout out to you, Boris. Good to have you with us. And on the Rockfin, Hempcar is here on the Rockfin. Oh, we got Zaire in Denmark. Karen Mendes in Germany. Shout out to you. Moonlight Beach in California. Scott S. Welcome, Scott S. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to have you here. Good to have you with us. Names and locations, names and locations. Names and locations. Good night. All right. So I guess I'll start answering. So Robert, our good friend Robert, I don't know if he wants me to say his last name or not. He sent a very long super chat about the Oppenheimer movie that he wanted me to read. So Robert, I'm going to read off your Oppenheimer super chat. So here we go. He says, 1, Oppenheimer was essentially canceled by cancel culture 1.1 McCarthyism. Very good point. I would agree, right? McCarthyism was basically cancel culture, destroy people's lives for their associations, make people apologize for what they've said, mob justice, demonizing a person. I would agree with that. Point number 2, it proves that people that are brilliant can be interested in communist ideas, as you said in your video. And that's true, right? I've pointed out many, many times, so many smart people throughout history. Some of the greatest writers and scientists and most well-respected people were communists, that's something that anti-communists always want to gloss over, right? 3, the stance that some communist groups have taken is a defeatist take. A lot of communists have gotten mad at him for just being a fellow traveler or being forced to name names during McCarthyism. What happened to him was horrible, period, and his mistakes should be forgiven. That's true, right? We always hear the story about Gus Hall. Gus Hall said that, somebody came up to him and said, Gus, I burned my party card. And he said, you did what you had to do, comrade. Yeah, it was a hard time. Not everyone could be as strong, but I do encourage people. People that cowardice, right, is a problem, right? And that, people who betray their friends, especially to please a bunch of anonymous bots and trolls on social media. We do need to call that out. People who betray their friends, etc. So I'm not sure I totally agree with you there. Him naming names, etc. We do need to set a precedent where people don't stab their friends in the back and betray them. And I've had a lot of people do that to me for, dumb shit. The second they find out that social media is going to punish them for being friendly to me, all of a sudden they want to, they want to denounce. And I Gus Hall didn't burn his card. Someone walked up to Gus Hall and apologized for burning their party card during McCarthyism, and he forgave them. So there you go. That's the story I always heard. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you there, Robert. I do think that, we need to make clear that you don't turn in your friends. You don't throw your friends under the bus. And that this culture we have, look, I can't stand the fact that in our circles, right, and in anti-imperialist media, everyone is constantly attacking everybody else. And I'm sick of it, right? I spend so many, not anymore, but I used to. I spend so much time sick to my stomach wondering which one of these social media narcissists is mad at me today. And it's frustrating, right? They all are so petty, and they're all, I don't want to be associated with this person. I don't want to, and it's childish, and people need to get over it, right? And I put myself out there, and I'm nothing but friendly to these people. And I've had so many of these people that I've been nothing but friendly to. They hear about, somebody runs to them and says, well, he said blah, 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 or somebody does this and they denounce me, or they cut me off and they start attacking me in order to try and advance their career. It's really annoying, and it's really frustrating and disgusting. And I'm a real organizer. I'm trying to build an in real life organization, a real network of people that are anti-imperialist in America, because I know shit's going to hit the fan, right? And that we're going to hit a period where things get a lot worse than they are now. And we need a network of people. And these people, they don't care about that. They just want to make a buck on social media, and they got to prove they're the real one and you're the phony. And so if they know that you might be smarter than them, or that you might understand this stuff better than them, they got to destroy your reputation to prove that they're better. Or if they're afraid they'll get attacked for associating with you. And it's so frustrating. And yeah, we really do need to develop a culture on the left where people say, look, I'll work with people I disagree with to stop war. I'll work with people I disagree with to build socialism. And we got to get over this cancel culture, denounce and disavow. And we got to hold people to a standard where you don't abandon your friends just because maybe they did something you didn't like. You know, there's people that I associate with now that honestly, there are things they say I don't agree with. There are things they do that I don't agree with, but I don't throw them under a bus because I'm not a punk. All right. That's what punks do, is they throw people under the bus, right? And we need to set a precedent in our society not to have people be punks, right? It is a cowardly thing to betray your friends, right? And you know, people, and if you betray, and it's one thing, right, if someone does it to you. But honestly, if they do it to somebody else, take note, because then they'll do it to you. Traitors betray people. Backstabbers backstab. And if someone proves to be a backstabber and someone proves to be a traitor, if that's the case, don't work with them, because they'll do the same thing to you. They will do the same thing to you. And that's what I've warned people about, right? And people know this generally, right? You know, I mean, there was somebody who did something to me. I'm not even going to get into specifics. And then he tried to go work someplace that I have worked. And they laughed in his face. And they said, I'm sorry, you did what you did to Caleb, and you think we would trust you not to do that to us? Right? You know, I mean, give me a break. Give me a break, right? When people behave in an unprofessional way, right? You know, when people backstab their friends and all of that, when people show that they're not trustworthy, people don't want to work with them. They don't, right? So yeah, there you go. I'm loyal to my friends. I've been stabbed in the back and betrayed many times, but I stick by my friends. Even when my friends do things I don't agree with, right? I stick by them. You know, there's even people now, honestly, that I'm really disappointed in. And we'll get to that later. It's in the super chats, you know, that have taken bad stances on Israel, you know, and I'm really, really disappointed in them. And, you know, but I'm not going all against them on social media. You know, I have made clear how I feel, and I have expressed, you know, I didn't make a big show of it, but people know I disagree with what they're saying, but I'm not making a big show of denouncing and disavowing them, because, you know, I feel like they could get better at some point. So, you know, that's, I'm not with you there, Robert. I'm of the opinion that we need to hold people to higher standards. And, you know, when, you know, there's been way too much denouncing and disavowing, and there, you know, McCarthyism. I mean, look, we need to expect people not to join the mobs. We need to expect people to have courage. I also read his biography that the film is based on, and later in life, he hung out with a lot of people from the Congress for Cultural Freedom and was aware that the CIA was basically running it. I don't think that is very practical to simply demonize Oppenheimer for aligning with them at that time. Yeah, he was a Cold War liberal at that point. I mean, he was opposed to nuclear war and escalation, but he was not a communist. He had burned his bridges with the actual communists. Said, I choose to look at it as a tragedy of history. The Congress for Cultural Freedom was a perfect way to subvert intellectuals out of the communist movement, instead of demonizing intellectuals. They got caught on it, but we should be more aware of this tactic, find alternative tactics to appeal to intellectuals, a possible alternative to counteract superficial victims of anti-communism. Well, the main thing is we don't want to recruit intellectuals. We want to recruit the masses, right? We want to recruit people on the basis that we are fighting for jobs and healthcare and education and the things that they need. While the system is collapsing, right? Intellectuals are not trustworthy. They'll go one way, they'll go another way. We want to get to the masses. That's my approach. So, you know, some intellectuals will have courage, like Lillian Hellman, for example, but others won't. Right? The highlight of the film is essentially an anti-nuclear war message. Okay. This is one of the most important issues of our time, which is probably why the film was made in the present day. Conclusion. The Oppenheimer film has an extremely good political message overall, being extremely anti-nuclear weapons and anti-cancel culture. I watched it. I was bored for a lot of the movie, I will say. I kind of liked when they were making the bomb. That was kind of exciting. I was kind of amused afterwards, but ultimately I found the film to be kind of dull. But, you know, I agree with some of what you said there, Robert. I agree with, you know, the fact that it showed that a very smart person could be a communist, because the arrogance that these people, that anti-communists have, you'd have to be stupid to be a communist. Well, actually, no. Many of the smartest people were. And, you know, I mean, that it shows how McCarthyism and cancel culture was used to destroy people. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I just didn't find it to be overall the best movie ever made. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't make a film like that without highlighting those 2 points. And people need to see that in their culture, and warning about nuclear war. Nuclear war is particularly dangerous. So there you go. There you go. All righty. So now I'm going to start answering super chat. Oh, we've got a Rumble rant from Delta V. So I'll do the Rumble rant first, right? Because that's the way we do it here. Delta V says, what explains the support for Israel among Indian groups? Easy. They hate Muslims. No, I'm being blatantly serious, right? In India, Muslims are considered to be the enemy. Pakistan was formed for Muslims. India was formed for Hindus. Hard right Indian Hindu nationalists really hate Muslims. And Israel is fighting Muslims. And that's what it's about. And yes, that is true. There are a lot of Hindus, people from India, who hate Muslims. And they also tend to be big supporters of Israel. And because Muslims tend to be anti-Israel and rally in support of the Palestinians. And so there's a lot of Hindus, a lot of people in India who really support Israel because they feel that Israel is fighting the Muslims. It's kind of an ethnic thing. There's a lot of hatred for Muslims among folks from India. Not all of them, mind you, right? I mean, but among the Hindu nationalist crowd, the hard right in India, there's a really vicious hatred for Muslims. The left of India is a little bit better on that, but right. CJ agrees. Yes, that's right. That's why they're called Hindu Zionists. Yeah, that one was a pretty straight up one, Delta V. That's what it's about, right? They hate Muslims. It's that simple. All righty. The super chat question I've got here. Would you visit the DPRK? Yes, I would, but it's illegal under U.S. law. The U.S. State Department bans travel to North Korea. It is illegal. It's not permitted under U.S. law to visit there, which is an outrageous thing. I mean, it's technically not legal to go to Cuba and a lot of other countries, but with Cuba, people challenge it routinely. And, for a while I was talking to people about trying to find a friend or somebody, then maybe me or somebody, to challenge the travel ban to North Korea. But legally speaking, I spoke to some attorneys and they said it's not legally viable. It would just put you in a bad situation, right? But I hope that at some point a legal travel challenge would be mounted, because it is completely unconstitutional for them to tell you can't visit North Korea. Completely unconstitutional, right? And they tried that with Cuba, and people have been defying the ban ever since because they don't want it to go to court, because the Supreme Court would rule against it. You have the freedom to travel. You can travel. But yeah, I can't visit North Korea under U.S. law, right? The State Department forbids travel to North Korea. It is illegal. They say they'll deactivate your passport and fine you $25,000. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. All right. Tulsi seems to have forgotten the difference between Iran and ISIS. Very disappointing. Yeah, I mean, Tulsi, look, I mean, I like Tulsi in a lot of ways, but I can't be supporting her now. I can't be showing clips of her now on my stream, because what would the Palestinians think? What would the Muslim people of the world think? What she's saying right now about the conflict in Gaza is reprehensible. I mean, there's no way around it. What she's doing, the stances that she's taking, it's reprehensible. It's utterly reprehensible what she's saying about Israel-Palestine right now. She is on the wrong side, and she is saying awful things, and she's echoing their talking points about Iran, and it's just reprehensible. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I like Tulsi, and I know that she's influenced by my work, right? But I mean, I'm not celebrating that right now. All right. Any alternate history videos related to communism? I don't do alternate history, Battle Cossack, because you can't do alternate history, right? Everything that happens for an infinite number of reasons. And when people start playing that shoulda, coulda, woulda game, if only this had happened, you don't know that, right? Things happen for a wide variety of reasons, for unique historical circumstances. And if you actually understand the nature of history, you understand that there is no alternate history, right? Alternate history is a very naive understanding of the way events happen. And that applies to your own life too. A lot of people get caught up in thinking about their own life. And if only I had done this, but you didn't do that. You didn't do that. And there's a reason you didn't do that. And for you to have not done that, you would have had to have been in different circumstances. And then those circumstances were based on something else. And the more you start digging into the past, you realize there is no alternate history. There's no shoulda, coulda, woulda, the butterfly effect. That's one way of putting it. But every event is tied in with other events. And there's no going back and saying, if only I had just, no, doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way, right? You know, you can say, oh, if only I had rolled the dice differently. Well, if you had rolled the dice differently, right, that means you would have shaken them in your hand and dropped them in a different way. And you shook them in your hand and dropped them in a certain way because of the circumstances you were in that room. So the circumstances in that room would have to have changed. Your mindset as you rolled the dice, everything would have to change. There is no coulda, shoulda, woulda. There is no if only blank had happened, then there's none of that. There's none of it, right? There is none of that. And that is a mind trap that people fall into. And it's a dangerous mind trap that people get stuck in, right? You know, I was reading Wallace Wattles. You all know Wallace Wattles? Shout out to Tyler if he's watching. What, you know, right? Wallace Wattles. I love this guy. He's a self-help guy who was a socialist, a Christian socialist, a supporter of Eugene Debs. And, you know, this guy, he had a way of looking at the world. I really love Wallace Wattles' work. I really, really do. And he had a way of talking about how you need to understand things in life, right? You need to understand the universe as if every bad thing that happens, right, is just a contradiction, right? It's just a contradiction of the world resolving contradictions and moving toward a greater stage of perfection. That's how you have to understand it. Right? And that we're developing and we're moving toward a greater stage of perfection, right? And that it's like everything is in a process, right? That's how you have to understand it. Is that we're trying to achieve perfection, and that everything that we do is it's just a process, right? And that if a contradiction happens or if a hardship happens in your life, it happens because you need to, you know, you're going through it in order to overcome it and become stronger through it, right? And that this is a process. That's how you have to understand it, right? That everything is going through a process of moving toward perfection, right? And that's kind of how human history is working. I mean, we're eventually moving toward communism, but in order to get toward communism, we have to move through great contradictions, right? Right? I'm trying to find the quote. Right? Trying to find the quote, but I've really enjoyed Wallace Wattles' work. It's very, very powerful. It's good stuff. Right? One viewpoint will make you grow greater, and the other will inevitably cause you to grow smaller. One will enable you to work for the eternal things, to do large works in a great way toward completing all that is incomplete and inharmonious, and the other will make you a patchwork reformer, working almost without hope to save a few lost souls from what you consider to be lost and doomed world. See, it makes a vast difference to you, this matter of social viewpoint. All's right with the world. Nothing can possibly be wrong but my personal attitude, and I will make it right. I will see the facts of nature and all events, circumstances, and conditions of society, politics, and government, and industry from the highest viewpoint. It is all perfect, though incomplete. It is the handiwork of God, and behold, it is all very good. Right? And that's the understanding, is that what we are seeing is the universe moving gradually through hardship, through contradiction, toward the stage of perfection, right? That is the way you need to see the world, that the world and all it contains is perfect, though not completed. Rather than seeing the world as flawed, right? And rather than seeing the world as just awful, see it as incomplete. See it as working toward completing perfection. right? And that is the way you have to look at things, right? Here, I'll read it to you, right? Wallace Wattles, this is chapter 6 of The Science of Being Great. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. And without faith, it is impossible for you to become great. The distinguishing characteristic of all really great men and women is an unwavering faith. We see this in Lincoln during the dark days of the war. We see it in Washington at Valley Forge. We see it in Livingston, the crippled missionary threading the mazes of the dark continent, his soul aflame with determination to let it light upon the accursed slave trade, which his soul abhorred. We see it in Luther and in Francis Willard and every man and woman who has attained a place in the muster roll of the great places of the world. Faith, not a great faith in oneself or in one's own powers, but faith in principle, and something great which upholds right and which may be relied upon to give us the victory in due time. Without this faith, it is not possible for anyone to rise to real greatness. The man who has no faith in principle will always be a small man. Whether you have this faith or not depends on your point of view. You must learn to see the world as being produced by evolution, as something that is evolving and becoming not a finished work. Millions of years ago, God worked with the very low and crude forms of life, low and crude, yet each perfect after its kind. Higher and more complex organisms, animal and vegetable, appeared through the successive stages. The earth passed through the stage after stage in its unfolding, each stage perfect in itself, and to be succeeded by a higher one. What I wish to note is that the so-called lower organisms are as perfect after their kind as the higher ones. And the world is the of the Echoan period was perfect for that period. It was perfect, but God's work was not finished. And this is true of the world today. Physically, socially, and industrially, it is all good and is all perfect. It's not complete anywhere or in any part, but so far as the handiwork of God has gone perfect. This must be your point of view, that the world and all it contains is perfect, though not completed. All's right with the world. That is a great fact. There is nothing wrong with anything. There is nothing wrong with anybody. All the facts of life you must contemplate from that standpoint. There is nothing wrong with nature. Nature is a great advancing presence working through beneficently for the happiness of all. All things in nature are good. She has no evil. She is not completed, for creation is still unfinished. But she is going on to give man even more bountifully than she has given him in the past. Nature is a partial expression of God, and God is love. She is perfect, but not complete. So it is of human society and government. What, though there are trusts and combinations of capital and strikes and lockouts and so on, and all these things are part of the forward movement. They are the incidental to the evolutionary process of completing society. And when it is complete, there will be harmony, but it cannot be completed without them. J.P. Morgan is as necessary to the coming social order as the strange animals of the reptiles were to the life of the succeeding period. Just as these animals were perfect after their kind, so Morgan is perfect after his kind. Behold, it is all very good. See government and industry as being perfect now and as advancing rapidly toward being complete. And then you will understand that there is nothing to fear, no cause for anxiety, nothing to worry about. Never complain of any of these things. They are perfect. This is the very best possible world for the stage of development that man has reached. This will sound like rank folly to many, perhaps most people. What, they will say, are child labor and the exploitation of men and women in the filthy and unsanitary factories? Aren't these evil things? Aren't saloons evil? Don't you mean to say that we shall accept all these things and call them good? Child labor and similar things are no more evil than the way of living and the habits and practices of cave dwellers were evil. His ways were those of the savage stage of man's growth, and for that stage they were perfect. And our industrial practices are those of the savage stage of industrial development, and they are also perfect. Nothing better is possible until we cease to be mental savages in industry and business and become men and women. And this can only come about by the rise of a whole race to a higher viewpoint. This can only come about by the rise of such individuals here and there as are ready for the higher viewpoint. The cure for all this inharmoniousness lies not with the master or employers, but with the workers. Whenever they shall reach a higher viewpoint, whenever they shall desire to do so, they can establish a complete brotherhood and harmony in industry. They have the numbers and the power, and they are getting now what they desire. Wherever they desire in more of a higher and purer, more harmonious life, they will receive more. True, they want more now, but they want more of the things that make for animal enjoyment, and so industry remains in the savage, brutal animal stage. But when the workers begin to rise to the mental plane of living and ask for more of the things that make life of the mind and soul, industry will at once be raised above the plane of savagery and brutality. But it is perfect now upon its plane, behold. In fact, it is all very good. So it is true of saloons and dens of vice. If the majority of the people desire these things, it is right and necessary they should have them. But when the majority desires a world without such discords, they will create such a world. So long as men and women are on the plane of bestial thought, so long as the social order will be a part disorder and will show bestial manifestations, the people will make society what it is, and the people rise above bestial thought. Society will rise above the beastly in its manifestations. But a society which thinks in a bestial way must have saloons and dives, and it is perfect after its kind, as the world of the Echoing period, and all good. All this does not prevent you from working for better things. You can work to complete an unfinished society instead of to renovate a decaying one. You can work with a better heart and a more hopeful spirit. It will make an immense difference in your faith and spirit, whether you look upon civilization as a good thing that is becoming better or a bad thing that is decaying. One viewpoint gives you an advancing, expanding mind, and the other gives you a descending and decreasing mind. One viewpoint will make you grow greater, and the other will inevitably cause you to grow smaller. One will enable you to work for the eternal things, to do large works, a great way toward completing all that is incomplete and inharmonious, and the other will make you a mere patchwork reformer, working almost without hope to save a few lost souls from what you grow to consider a lost and doomed world. So it makes a vast difference to you, this matter of social viewpoint. All's right with the world. Nothing can possibly be wrong but my personal attitude, and I will make that right. I will see the facts of nature and all the events and circumstances and conditions of society, politics and government and industry from the highest viewpoint. It is all perfect, though incomplete. It is all the handiwork of God, and behold, it is all very good. That is the way that you have to view the world, right? You have to view it as gradually becoming more perfect. So there we go. There we go. All righty. So you have to view it as, the fall of the Soviet Union, right? It was bad. It was awful, but it was resolving contradictions that existed. And Russia is now moving ahead, right? Because they resolved some of the issues that they had at the fall of the Soviet Union, right? The Cultural Revolution in China was awful, but as a result of it, China fixed some of the issues they had in their socialist economy, and now they've been speeding ahead, right? And you want to say, well, if they just hadn't done that, yeah, you can say that. Oh, if they just hadn't done that, but things happened for a reason. But as a result, it's that whole thing about that which does not kill you makes you stronger. That's kind of how you have to understand these things. All these bad things in the past happened, but they were to resolve contradictions, and humanity as a whole got stronger and reached a higher plane. There we go. It's like this guy just read the Cliff Notes. Yeah, again, appealing to standard anti-communist bias, standard anti-communist narratives. That's the frustrating thing about all this stuff, right? It assumes people already hate communism, and based on that, it just panders to that, right? And it's like, if there were genuine communists out there arguing with these people, they would never get away with these arguments, right? They would never get away with saying socialism just led to mass starvation. But, they make sure that they've got a lot of people speaking in the name of communism who don't defend existing socialism. The alternative history community is so cringe. Even worse than BreadTube. Best example is Cody video on Stalin or China. I don't know anything about it. And I just like the whole notion of alternative history is mentally unhealthy. It's deeply, deeply unhealthy. The entire notion of alternative history, it gets you in a mindset, right? It gets you in a mindset where you're opposing your own development. You're saying, oh, we should just go backward and fix, and you can't do that, right? And it gets you, hindsight is 2020. It's easy to criticize, exactly. And that the whole concept of alternative history just kind of rubs me the wrong way. So that I'll say. Well, you know what, folks? I want to keep answering people's questions. I am going to stay on here. Oh, you want my email address? First name, last name, gmail.com. That's it, right? No spaces, periods, or anything. calebmoppin@gmail.com. You want to reach me, Bruce? That's the way to reach me. But, I struggle to remain optimistic. I really do, right? It's something I really, really struggle with. But, look, I think about the fact, like CPI, we've had some hardships, obviously, but those hardships it was a purge, right? There were a lot of people that were in CPI that didn't belong there, and they were holding back CPI. So it's good that they all purged themselves in one fell swoop. I mean, it was really convenient if you really think about it. We couldn't do what we did in March with the Summit Against Hypocrisy. We couldn't have done that if those people were still around. We couldn't have done the amazing, event that we did in July. Imagine trying to do the World Youth Festival with all these people around, right? These people needed to go. And, they needed to go. And it was like, in a way, it was like a miracle. They were all gone all at once. And the wreckers were gone, right? The wreckers were gone. And not only were the wreckers gone, there were a bunch of weak links in our chain. There were certain people, I'm not going to repeat their name, who didn't belong in the organization. They either weren't strong enough, or they were traitors and cowards, and they ran. And now they're all gone, right? And that's great. And now, look, I'm the chair of the U.S. delegation to the World Youth Festival. We're organizing a huge anti-imperialist conference in Portland. I just interviewed the president of Iran, right? We're moving ahead as an organization, but we had to work out the contradictions, right? We had to, right? There were certain people that if we had continued dragging them along, they would have weighed us down, right? And maybe some of you know who those people are, and maybe you don't, and it's not important because they're gone now and they're never coming back. Even if they came to me and asked to come back, I would say no. Now, some people who maybe they just, they felt bad about what happened, that's one thing. But the people who actually betrayed me, I know they're traitors now. And these were people, some of them who'd been floating around and they'd been lousy friends for a long time. And then they ended the relationship. One of my flaws, I'll be honest about this with all of you, I am too loyal. I stand by my friends too much. You know that? Right? I will give people too many chances, right? I want people to be better. I view it as my duty to make people that work with me better, to give people different chances, to forgive people, to help empower people. I view it as my duty. And my mistake has been, because I am so committed to trying to make people better, I will drag people along, right? And there were a lot of people that I dragged along who just didn't want to be better. They just didn't want to be better. They just didn't have it in them. And I realized that, I made the mistake, and I've done this, right? I want people to succeed, right? I want people to succeed. I really do. I want people to be successful. I do. I want people who work with me to be successful. I want them to write amazing books. I want them to give amazing talks. I want them to make this organization, the Center for Political Innovation, their own. And when people don't want to be successful, I try to help them anyway. When people say they want to be successful, I believe them. They don't. Not everyone wants to be successful. A lot of people just don't want to be successful. I'll be blatantly honest with you. There are a lot of people who it's not that they aren't given opportunity. It's that they don't want to succeed. And it's frustrating. And I get frustrated sometimes because I see people who suck giving huge opportunities, but they expose themselves, right? That's part of the process working itself out. But there are many people I've worked with over the years who they just don't want to succeed. they just don't want to succeed. And it's heartbreaking to me because they tell me, oh, I want to succeed. And then they are always jealous of me and what I have. And I'm happy to share with them what I have. I want them to make a good contribution. I want them to be successful. And they don't want that. They want to just, that what's really, there's a lot of people, and I've learned this. What's holding them back is in their head. Right? That they're not being held back by their life circumstances. They're not being held back by, they're being held back by stuff in their head. Now, that stuff in their head is often trauma. And that's a result of life circumstances. That stuff in their head is often the result of the conditions they grew up in. It's the result of, in some cases, it's related to generations of oppression and the way people learn to think during, being oppressed. And so you can't blame people for everything in their head. All right. It's not just that they just don't have the willpower, but a lot of what holds people back and prevents people from making a contribution. I'm not talking about making money here. I'm not talking about getting famous. I'm talking about making a real contribution to anti-imperialism. A lot of people say they really want to organize for socialism. They really want to stand up against the U.S. imperialists, but you give them the opportunity to do it and they go, maybe I can't. Maybe I can't. Look, I don't know. I'm really tempted to give you some blatant examples of this, but I can't. I really can't, right? We're trying not to get the web drama going. Web drama gets you views, right? If I were to start talking about people on here and then they made videos back at me, etc. If I were to do that, then, I'd get a lot of views for sure, but that doesn't help me organizationally. It's tempting. It's tempting to start an internet war with people. But look, I think it can be fun to speculate about how things might have gone as an intellectual exercise. But yes, obsessing over it is bad. Well, I hear you. I mean, but I'm telling you, you can't think about how they would have gone because you don't know. You don't know. You don't know how they would have gone because they happened the way they did for an infinite number of reasons, right? And they happened the way they did because this is a process of making the universe more perfect, right? And that's the way you need to understand it, right? You need to understand why it happened, but you need to go, oh, well, if only no, you need to understand that, you made the choices you made because of the circumstances that you were in, right? I need to understand it. If anyone has any more super chats to throw my way, by all means, let's keep the conversation going. I'm going to keep talking at you till midnight. Right. But yeah, there's many people I've worked with. They just don't have it in them to be anything more than a complainer, and it's sad. It's really, really sad. And you can open the doors for them and you can try to present them opportunities and stuff. And they just are like, no, I want to be a bitter complainer. I want to be angry at the world. I want to be a bitter complainer on the internet. I want to be old man yelling at cloud. That's what I want to be. And if that's what somebody really wants to be, let them, and that's the sad thing, right? I wish I could find people who wanted to do what I'm doing as much as I do. And I have found them. And there are people like that. Thank God, our president, Elizabeth Young, she understands what this project is about. She is dedicated to it. There's a number of other people I could name that I found who haven't purged themselves, and they want to do what I'm doing. They want to build this movement. They want to organize anti-imperialism. They want to see an optimistic, constructive socialist movement. They want to see it on the same level that I do. And because of that, they're able to conduct themselves in a principled manner. But there's a lot of people that just want to be old man yells at cloud on the internet. That's all they want to do. Right? They want to, they again, it's kind of like that passage I just read you from Wallace Wattles, right? Is that you can't, and that's the problem with leftism, is that you can't see the world as corrupted and unjust, and you're going to yell at it and fight against it. You have to see the world as moving toward perfection. You have to see it as perfect but incomplete, and that the work that you are doing is helping it move closer toward the ultimate goal of perfection. That's the way you have to see it. And it's a hard mindset to develop, right? It goes against a lot of what we think of as the socialist and communist mindset. But Wallace Wattles was a communist. He was a socialist. Eugene Debs supporter. You heard him there. When the workers want it, when they learn to want it, they will seize control of the means of production. But right now they don't want it, right? I mean, he's explaining. I mean, that's the way we have to see it, right? I'm thinking about talking about, new thought socialism, right? We're already, we talk about suit socialism when we wear suits. We talk about the city building tendency, city builder socialism. We talk about patriotic socialism, constructive socialism. Maybe we need to talk about new thought socialism, right? Socialism based on new thought, right? And the understanding that your thoughts make reality, right? The world isn't going to hell, it's going to God. Exactly. Right? And if we approach the world like it's going to hell, we're going to get hell back from the world, right? We have to view the world as moving toward perfection, right? We have to learn to adopt that kind of mindset. We really, really have to do that. Anything else people want me to talk about? I'm going to be on here for another 5 minutes at least. So anything else? Anything else, just throw it my way. But yeah, we have to see the world. Love you too, my brother, right? Doing the best we can, right? I am so excited for Portland. I cannot tell you how excited I am for Portland. It is going to be awesome. I never realized how scary it would get once you actually put skin in the game, so to speak, as an actual anti-imperialist. You really do start to go when you do start doing stuff in real life. I'm sorry to hear that. But the hardship that you're going through today, it'll be that much easier tomorrow. That's what I'm telling you, G-Bus. I don't know who you are, G-Bus, but I'm telling you, it's hard today. Look, I could show you some speeches that I gave years ago when I was first getting started, and they were horrendous. But I had to do that so I could learn to speak better, right? You have to fall down when you're learning to ride a bike, okay? And it's hard, right? When you said you struggle with speaking, you really do go okay, that's fine, because interacting with people is scary, especially in this age when people don't have to, when people can just be on their phones, they can be isolated on their computers all day. It's actually very scary, seeing people in real life. But the more you do it, the easier it is. I always tell the story. It's in my letter to Bob Avakian. Go to the last chapter of my letter to Bob Avakian and read the story of the first communist newspaper I ever sold. Go and read it. I'm not going to read it to you now. I've read it to you on this stream before. The first communist newspaper I ever sold. I tell the story in the last chapter that begins on page 267. I tell the story the first time I ever sold a communist newspaper, right? I got to tell you, go and read it for yourself. I mean, you will learn by doing. You'll learn by doing. It's not easy. This is not easy work that we're engaging in. And you have to learn to tough it out. And you have to learn, there was a time I remember when I was in college where I was organizing to drive out the Bush regime. That was what I was dedicated to. I was there was a campaign to impeach George W. Bush, and I was working for that campaign. So I went to my college campus. They gave me a stack of posters, and it was like they didn't ask. It wasn't like, do you think you could put these posters up at your college campus? No, it was like I'm getting out of the car. These people had given me a lift to a protest. I'm getting out of the car, and they pull out a stack of posters, and they're like, put these up on your campus tomorrow before I see you. And I'm like, but I don't know. I got to study tonight. No. Put these up on your campus. And I thought, I better put these up on my campus, right? I had parents who had trained me to be very obedient. Let me just put it that way. And so I thought, oh boy, I'm trying to, be a communist now. I'm in college. I better go put up all these posters on my campus. And so I got the posters and I put them up all over my campus. Right? And I started at my dorm room, and I circled all the dorm rooms at my college were like in a circle. And so I went to all the different dorm rooms and I put up these posters. I got back to my dorm room at the beginning, and every single poster that I had put up in my dorm room where I'd started had been ripped down. Every single one had been ripped down. Every single one. I had just spent the entire night going from dorm room to dorm room, putting up these posters to drive out the Bush regime. Every single one of them had been torn down. I found one that was ripped down and had "Go Bush" written on it. Right? Every single one of them had been ripped down. And so then I get back to my dorm room. This is classic. I get back to my dorm room, and there's one of the posters. It's folded up, you know, and it's got a note from my RA, my resident assistant, my dorm room boss. And he says to me, I need to speak to you about this, Caleb. So I go and knock on his door. It's college, right? These RAs are 24/7. I go and knock on his door, and he's all like, you know, I could write you up for this. And I said, why? And he said, well, this has information about donating money, and we have a rule at this campus against soliciting donations on campus. And this is, you know, how do you think I felt that night? I had just spent the whole evening putting up posters. Every single one of them had been ripped down. I'm a freshman in college. This is like my first couple weeks in college, right? And not only is every single one of the posters I've been putting up ripped down, but some of them are shredded up and have "Go Bush" written on them and all of this. And then just to top it off, just the icing on the cake, is now my resident assistant is mad at me for you know, saying I could write you up for this. This is not allowed. How do you think I felt? But you know what? That needed to happen. And I got through it. And I continued putting up posters. And, you know, it got easier. You know, I mean, it's that you have to experience these hardships, right? You have to go through these difficulties, right? You know, and that every time you do it, I will tell you, the summer of 2008, I mean, we're past midnight now, but I'm still talking. So there you go. The summer of 2008, I got kicked out of Cobo Hall in Detroit so many times. Cobo Hall is downtown Detroit. It's like a conference center in downtown Detroit. It's public property. It's actually owned by the city of Detroit, not private. However, the security guards they had there were the dumbest human beings. I shouldn't say that. They were not the sharpest tools in the shed. And every time I was at Cobo Hall leafleting, the security guards would come up to me and be like, this is private property. You can't do this here. So the political group I was in sued the city of Detroit and won a settlement. And there was a lawsuit, and the political group I was in won thousands of dollars from the city of Detroit, saying that we had the right to leaflet in Cobo Hall. They took it to court. They won. And we printed out the court ruling, and we went back to Cobo Hall and started handing out leaflets. And the security guard said, this is private property. You can't do it. And we tried to show them the ruling. He's like, nope, don't want to hear. And I got kicked out of Cobo Hall every day, practically in 2008. Every time I would go to Cobo Hall, a stupid security guard would come up to me like, this is private property. You can't be here. And I'm like, it's not private property. It's not private property. And then we won money in a settlement from the city of Detroit in court, and they still kicked us out. Even when we showed them the court ruling, I would still get kicked out of Cobo Hall. I would go to Cobo Hall, and it was like a joke. It was like a game I would play. How long before they kick me out this time? Right? How long before they kick me out this time? Right? And it was like sometimes I'd be in there an hour or 2 hours. Sometimes I'd be in there for 15 minutes. It was like a game. But eventually there'd be two security guards that would see me and be like, hey, let's go, buddy. Let's go. This is private property. I'd be like, it's not private property. No, it's not. This is public property. I'm at a public event and public property. I have the right to hand out leaflets. No, you don't. No, you don't. I've got this court ruling here in my pocket. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know, I mean, I have been kicked out of buildings. It was a wild experience. I was leafleting for a moratorium on home foreclosures. I was literally at, this is great. I was literally at a conference sponsored by Acorn. You remember Acorn? It's like the Obama liberal group. I'm leafleting for a moratorium on home foreclosures. Right? And there's a poster on the wall right behind me of the things that Acorn believes in. One of them is a moratorium on home foreclosures. I'm standing in front of the poster leafleting for a moratorium on home foreclosures. You can't be here, or you can't be here with that. I said, I'm here. This is the conference. It's a moratorium on home foreclosures. That's what I'm here. Nope, you can't be here. We had a court ruling. Took this to court. We sued you guys. We have the right to be here. No, you don't. Get out of the building, young man. I got kicked out of Cobo Hall so many times, and I just kept coming back, right? You got to learn to be tough. You have got to learn to be tough. I tell you, I had a fantasy in my head that we would have an event and invite the security guards to the event sometime. We would like tell the security guards they had won my fantasy was that we would tell them they'd won a boat or something, and they would all come to our office, and then we would kick them out, and they'd be like, where's my boat? And be like, no, don't want to hear it. Oh, because it was like, they just would not listen to you. Detroit and the courts, all of them said, you legally have the right to leaflet here, But these asshole security guards just wouldn't follow it. But it wasn't them being assholes. It was that their bosses just didn't want to follow the law, right? And they figured, are they going to sue us every time? I mean, there was this atmosphere that we don't allow people to leaflet, we don't allow people to poster, and it's frustrating. So, I've been through this kind of thing. That you just have to keep going, and it's not easy, but it gets easier the more you do it, and you become stronger as a result of doing it, right? And your skill in talking to people gets better, and your ability to handle opposition improves, and your confidence increases. It's a process. Every time I got kicked out of Cobo Hall, every time my posters got ripped down, I got stronger as a result of that, right? And that's the way you have to view these things, right? That it's an uphill battle, but every defeat, every moment that it's tough is just making you stronger. And then when things start going well, it's going to be that much easier, right? You have to view it that way. And it's hard and it's not easy, but you just have to do it, right? You just have to do it. You just have to do it. And that's the one good thing. As much as I rip Bob a new one here, I criticize Bob Avakian. One thing I will give his group credit for is they were hard asses. They did not take no for an answer, right? It was, you get out on the street, you sell that newspaper, you put the posters up. There was not a lot of patience. There was a lot of handing me leaflets and demanding I hand out all of them. There was a lot of demanding I put up posters. There was a lot of, you must do this, you do. And I am so thankful for that, because that got me out of my shell. It got me out of my shyness. It got me off the internet. It got me off the internet and into real organizing, which was really, really important, right? It got me into real organizing and engaging with real people. And it got me to understand what works and what doesn't work. I'm really thankful for that. And at the time I was just like, oh my God, why will these people give me a break? Well, no, go. That's how they were. Every Saturday they had me selling newspapers. They had me driving to different parts of the state to put up posters and leaflet. Good for them, right? As much as their political line is flawed, that's one aspect of them, is that they taught me how to go. They taught me how to organize. They taught me how to be dedicated and to do this for real, right? I am an outreach-oriented guy, and I don't see enough outreach these days, right? Everyone's organizing on the internet. And the problem with the internet is it's rigged, number one, and people only see what they go looking for, right? And so if we're going to build an organization, if we're going to get out of the movement to the masses, we can't do it on the internet, because that would mean we have to recruit people who ain't going to go looking for this. And that means we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Right? If all we ever recruit is people who go looking for this on the internet, number one, it's going to be a small group, because the internet is rigged. It's especially rigged against guys who work in Russian media and guys who support Iran and guys who defend China. So the internet's rigged, number one. Number two, right? The only kind of people that'll go looking for this are people that already kind of agree, right? We need to get to people who would never agree. People who would never agree with our perspective. People who would never even think. People who've never heard of any of these communist groups. People who have no idea why anyone would defend China or Russia. Why anyone would think socialism is the answer. We have to go to those people and present them with ideas they've never heard before. And have conversations where they ask us tough questions. Right? That's what we need to do. And there's no shortcuts. There's no way around it. Right? There's no, you can say, well, I just want to get on the internet and talk to people who agree with me, or argue with people who agree with me but have a slight disagreement. Okay, you can say that, but you're not doing your job. There is no way around it. We have to get out of the movement and to the masses. In Oregon right now, in the lead up to the Portland conference, they are hanging door knockers. This has already started, folks. It has already started. I am so proud of this. Our team in Portland is hanging door knockers on the doors of resident neighborhoods. Random people who just happen to live in Portland and happen to live in Oregon City, Oregon, are going to wake up one morning to find on their doorknob an invitation to the Center for Political Innovation Conference. That is amazing. right? And sure, maybe only 1 out of 100 of these people actually goes to our website. Cool. That's 1 person that we never would have reached, right? That's 1 person that I could be on here yelling and streaming and making great videos all day long, and we never would have reached that person. And we're hundreds of doorknobs are getting Center for Political Innovation invitations put on them right now. Hundreds of doorknobs. Elizabeth Young and her team and Christina and all the great Rick and all the great people out there. They are going in residential neighborhoods. They don't know anybody. And in the middle of the night, they're hanging on doorknobs. Center for Political Innovation door knockers with QR codes, with the information about the conference, with a few of our slogans on them. That's happening already. It's already happening. That is the future, my friends. That is the future, right? And hey, only 1 out of 100 of those doorknobs, somebody comes. That's 1 person we never would have reached. Somebody who never would have gone looking for us. Someone who had no clue what we were about. And they're sitting, and they're going to be sitting in the audience on December 2nd. And they're going to hear Jyoti Brar. They're going to hear Garland Nixon. They're going to hear Scott Ritter. And they're going to hear things that have blown their mind. They are going to, and we are going to win them to socialism, right? And we're going to do it. And even if they don't get one that day, even if they're just like, wow, this is so different than anything I've heard, I just have to go home and process it. And maybe we won't hear from that person for a year. But then something will come on the news and they'll remember that conference, that weird conference that happened in their neighborhood. And suddenly they'll get into this. And that happens. Don't you think that doesn't happen? I know people who thought I was crazy when I was talking about communism in high school, who thought I was crazy when I was talking about communism in college, who called me up years later. Oh my God, Caleb, I'm watching RT all the time. And it happens, right? Sometimes the arguments that you have with people, the payout doesn't come for a really long time. That's true. They'll say, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, but your voice is still echoing in their mind. And then they have some life experiences that match what you said, and things change. And then somebody else that they know says something, and then they sit there and they say, wow, Caleb was right. Caleb was right all along. And now with the internet, they can just get on here and find me right here. I'm telling you that outreach is the future. We have got to learn to do outreach, and internet doesn't count as outreach. We need to be knocking on people's doors. We need to be ringing doorbells. We need to be talking to people. We need to be reaching people we would never meet in a million years. Never. Right? And, you know, we're going to meet them as CPI. And in some cases, we're going to meet them as a church. We're going to meet them as City Builder Ministries, because we are the real Christians. Because if Jesus Christ were on this earth at this time, he would be in the streets with us. He would be calling for peace with Russia, peace with China. He would not want us to hate people around the world. He would be standing up for the rights of working people on the job, right? What did Jesus say to, right? A rich man came to Jesus one day and said to him, what can I do to be saved? This is in the Bible. I don't even know where, but, you know, rich man came to Jesus, said, what can I do to be saved? He said, sell all that you own and give it to the poor. And the man went away disappointed because he was very rich and he had many rich things and he wasn't going to do that. All right? That's Jesus. That's Jesus, right? Where is that? Where is that in the Bible? Reach it, you know, sell all you own and give it to the poor. Where was that? Sell all you own, give it to the poor. That's what Jesus said to the Matthew 19:21. That's where it is. Here, I'll read you the whole passage, right? So we'll get it right, right? We're going to get it right, right? So we're going to read Matthew 19. Matthew 19. What happened? Matthew 19. Right? Okay. Let's see if we can get a, this is New International. Let's do KJV, King James Version. All right. All right. Matthew 19. Here we go. All right. Here we go. All right. Okay. And behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good things shall I do that I may have eternal life? And he said unto him, Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, and that is God. But if thou wilt enter heaven, keep the commandments. And he said unto him, he saith unto him, Which? And Jesus said, Thou shalt not do murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor thy father and mother. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I'm sorry, is this the right? Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. And the young man saith unto him, All these things that have kept me from my youth, what lack I yet? And Jesus said unto him, If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give it to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. And when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, because he had many great possessions. And then Jesus said unto his disciples, Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter the kingdom of heaven. And I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And when the disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, Who can then be saved? But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all, and we have followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that you which have followed me in the regeneration of the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of glory, and ye shall sit upon the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And every man that has forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or land, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Now, if that's not revolutionary teaching, I don't know what that is. Damn. He just laid it all out there, didn't he? Right? He just laid it all out there. Many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. Right? And it's very hard for rich people to get into heaven. Very, very hard. That's Jesus. Right? And yeah, the wokes would have tried to cancel Jesus. Absolutely, they would have. And that it may be that it is the Christianity that is deep within many Americans that can be the road to them understanding that in order to apply it in our time, you have to be an advocate of socialism, right? And it may be that is the way we need to approach people. But we can approach people in other ways as well. But at the end of the day, right, our message, which is peace with Russia, peace with China, our message, which is building a better America, our message, which is jobs, schools, healthcare, and education, not prisons, drones, and bombs. Our message, it needs to get to people. And we have to break with the synthetic left. That's the first step. And we've done that, right? They hate us. We hate them. Good, right? We're not going around talking about transgender all day long. We're not going around canceling people. We're not, wearing pink hair and trying to burn cities down, right? So that's step one. We broke with the synthetic left. But step two is we have to actually get to the masses, right? Out of the movement. All right, we done that, Caleb. We're out of the movement, but now we got to get to the masses. We got to get to the masses. Got to get to the masses. There's no choice. We got to get to the masses. We got to learn to do outreach. We've got to learn to do outreach. So listen, everybody, it's been fun. It's been great. Yeah, I'm doing a patrons only stream tomorrow. And then I'll be back Thursday, most likely. But yeah, Portland, man. Portland. Register for Portland. Link is down below if you're coming. On top of that, send us a donation. We can use any help we can get. But we've got a job to do. Right? This is not an easy time to be an American. It's not an easy time to live in this world. These are scary times. It's hard, but we need people to just step up and take responsibility for the future. We need people to just, decide. Yeah. Killian gets it. Looking forward to Portland. Be there or be square. All right. I'm putting on the closing music. It's been fun, folks. I'll be back probably Thursday. Who knows? Maybe sooner. I don't know. Yeah, I'm putting on the closing music. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.